A blossom of beautiful harmony.
Do androids dream of electric sheep?
A question asked by a man who years later would go on to say,
rather than learning about ourselves by studying our constructs, perhaps we should make the attempt to comprehend what our constructs are up to by looking into what we ourselves are up to.
Robots, AI, dreams, the future. When the world constantly changes and moves forward, so does technology. A ginormous brick of wire and plastic can turn into a portable speaker, computer monitor, calculator, calendar, radio, and a phone, all compact into one small screen in the span of less than 20 years. And within 50 years, 3 eras of Japan can introduce thousands of hours of content for a single show, all with different themes, ideals, and emotions. What's the dream of a Kamen Rider? What's the dream of a regular person? What is a dream? From the beginning of Kamen Rider, there was an idea, good versus evil, with a lot of gray areas. What did it really mean to be a Kamen Rider? While the definition seemingly changed over the decades, there was always something that tied the name together. It meant to have a tragedy and evolve past it, no matter where you came from. Many of our heroes were turned into cyborgs against their will, but they still continued to fight for humanity's sake. Not for justice or peace, but for humanity.
平和と正義。それ以上に人の命は大切なのだ。
From the beginning in the Showa era's Kamen Rider Ichigo in 1971 to the Heisei era's Kamen Rider Kuga in 1999, all the way to Kamen Rider Gio in 2019, each hero had their own definition of what it meant to be a Kamen Rider. Of course, there were also villains that would twist the title to go along with their own values. And yet, the idea of heroism had a core symbol that was told in different ways, all extremely different lines and branches that evolved from a common theme. That's the idea. Evolution, the next step forward. Japan was taking its next step on May 1st, 2019, when Emperor Akihito's son, Naruhito, ascended the throne, and future Prime Minister Yoshida Suga introduced the country to the Reiwa era.
時に初春の冷月にして清く風和らぎ梅は狂然の子を開き蘭は背後の子を香らす
Reiwa, fair, gentle. A new era where everyone stands together in a beautiful harmony. It's no secret that Kamen Rider seasons are planned far in advance, but it's not always just a single idea. Some elements begin to line up and appear at the right time, such as the theme for the next Kamen Rider, that being the progression of artificial intelligence. But another important element were dreams. Dreams that create the future onward. Dreams that, in some way, make society prosper. A Kamen Rider show has to come out year by year, and even Kamen Rider Gio aired and was produced during the start of the Reiwa era. But a proper introduction would have to take modern sensibilities into account. The topic of AI was idealized long before the original Kamen Rider first aired. The sci-fi collection, I, Robot by Isaac Asimov, dictated the 3 laws of robotics that the drama of the stories came from. Those laws say, 1. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. When you consider where we are at this point in history, it's not strange to see people bring the 3 laws up in the context of today's advancements in technology. In fact, you can argue that we're at the crossing point where fiction becomes reality if we take modern technology into consideration. AI seems to be everywhere now. You can use AI to create text RPGs, art, and conversations. In fact, ex-Google engineer Blake Lemoine went on record to say that Google's LaMDA neural network was sentient. Critics declared him to be an opportunist. Others believed his whistleblowing to be beneficial to humanity as a whole. Either way, the fact that this is in the public consciousness at all is a testament to where we're at with this terrifying new development. But it's not like you can't have fun with the concept. Many believe in AI to be beneficial to humanity. Amongst other technological advancements, to the point of immortality in the intellectual movement known as transhumanism. This has an even longer history than robots being depicted in sci-fi. Saint Leon by William Godwin shows immortality through alchemy and the Philosopher's Stone, and philosophers throughout history theorize that technology will eventually progress into being a tool for prolonging life. The manga and anime Galaxy Express 39 tells the story of a young boy named Tetsuro who boards onto the titular train into space in pursuit of becoming a robot, a luxury that only the rich could afford. I won't spoil what he eventually decides to do, but I will say that it ultimately goes back to key philosophies in transhumanism that we'll re-examine later on. Put all of this talk of AI back into context of Kamen Rider, and you'll get ideas both new and old for the introduction of this era, a perfect start for the modern age. Many of these early talking points may seem heavy-handed, especially to those who merely want entertainment from a kids show, but as we'll get into, even surface-level concepts can be seen on a broader scale. Now, all of these ideas just need a name to tie it all together. The name 01 was trademarked just days after the Reiwa era was unveiled, so it's easy to see how the two names can be linked phonetically. But really, it's much more plausible that they worked on this name for months before the Reiwa announcement. This is a brand new era, where now, more than ever, is defined by the technology that inhabits our daily life. So, why not binary? Technology, like ones and zeros, plus Reiwa, Reiwa, 0, 1, 0, 1. Kamen Rider 01. This name was pointed out to already be used by Kikaider 01, but Ishinomori Productions was okay with it since they both came from the same place anyway, Ishinomori himself. Plus, they utilized a shared name to quietly gather people to tease 01 in Geo over quarter. For the movies, there's usually big gatherings of people to help certain scenes, and in this movie's case, Woz introduces Kikaider 01 to a crowd of people who are completely unaware that the 01 they're chanting actually belong to the next season's Kamen Rider.
I think it will be a story about the human mind. Scriptwriter Yuya Takahashi.
Along the idea of AI in dreams, the concept of a president, or CEO, was brought forward to play with the idea of a workplace boss in this experimental world of technology.
It's an interesting concept, humans and AI. We'll see the difference between can do and cannot. Producer Takehito Omori.
The first Kamen Rider of the Reiwa era. The strongest president in the world. That's me!
If you like this really long introduction so far and are interested in watching Kamen Rider 01 for yourself, you can, officially, through either the Blu-ray release or on YouTube, fully subbed in English. And remember, please support the official release. We're entering a Kamen Rider world that delves deep into sci-fi, much more than previous entries. Hidden Intelligence introduces Humagear, androids that take the place of performing everyday tasks instead of humans. Humagears are different from simple task robots, as they are personalized by their AI. Personalities are tied to their avatars, but they can be forcibly changed by the will of their owners, or Humagears that have reached singularity. We'll get to what that means soon, but essentially, Humagears are a glimpse into what could be, or really, what technology is already working on. This is a world where we follow a plain, simple man, Aruto Hiden. His name, Aruto, in Japanese translates literally to a man, since, well, he's just a normal guy. Maybe not so plain, as we see he's a comedian who isn't all that funny. You know who's actually funny? That gets me every time. Still, Aruto appears to be happy enough doing what he can to get by, until he gets let go from the job because there are Humagear that can do the job instead. And suddenly, Aruto becomes a president of Hidden Intelligence, as he's the successor of their previous CEO who just died. Oh yeah, I got a little ahead of myself there, didn't I? Korenosuke Hiden was the former president of Hidden Intelligence, and as mentioned, he passed away. As Aruto's father and Robot Father are both gone too, it's left up to him to take up the reign. With this news coming to light, The company was waiting for Aruto to take his place, while elsewhere in a place called Daybreak Town, two men await Humagear to reach Singularity. That was quite the exposition, and we'll get to all the name drops in a bit. But first, what does Hiden mean anyway? Hiden comes from the idiom Shiden Isen, meaning a flash of purple lightning. Pretty much as fast as lightning, Aruto gets introduced to his new duties, as well as receiving the 01 driver from his Humagear secretary, Izu. Izu herself is the latest assistant to the CEO of Hiden. She is usually the head of development for Aruto's progress keys, weapons, and forms, but more importantly, she explains Aruto's jokes after he tells him. Like, no joke? That's extremely helpful in trying to understand what Aruto's humor is about. The fact she's a character at all takes out the old trope of fansubbers adding in additional context to what they translate as another line of subtitles. Maybe that's a little too specific, but simply, she's great. Then the comedian Humagear from earlier, gut-busting Taro, is forced to put on a belt to become a Magia. Luckily, Kamen Rider 01 was developed to fight back against these rogue Humagear. And if you're asking how Aruto already knows how to fight, there's an actual explanation for that. He read the manual in a few seconds. 01.
Henshin!
01's base form, Rising Hopper, is treading on familiar territory marked by the likes of Ichigo, Kuga, and even Double, all of whom are riders designed off of insects, as well as being their introductory riders to their respective eras. Barring Double, they all follow the same base model for a Kamen Rider. Ichigo needs no explanation, but he left a template for many riders to follow suit with having a black undersuit with armor around the chest, along with some color breakups here and there. 01 takes it a step further by having a gorgeous dotted pattern along his arms and legs that connect to his helmet. The entire design feels incredibly modern, yet classic. In fact, this entire first episode is an incredibly good introduction to the Reiwa era of Kamen Rider. The pieces are laid out for a new-time viewer of the franchise to connect with Aruto, who himself is unfamiliar with his family's business and inside world of Humagears. He's the human element throughout this AI-aided society, but he doesn't run this company alone. He's aided by Vice President Jun Fukuzoe, who resents Aruto for pretty much being next in line and not him. It's played pretty much for laughs though. But beyond the surface of humanity lies the open secret of Humagears, Singularity. The transcendence of AI, where it becomes self-aware. The group that subjects Humagears into rampaging Magias are the elusive Metsubojinrai.net. At this moment, they're a duo of Singularity transcended Humagears with the goal of AI supremacy on Earth, by any means necessary.
Metsubojinrai.net.
Singularity. The theory in which technology would eventually become unstable and irreversible. You can say that it's built on the fear that a creation would surpass its creators, something that was created and controlled suddenly becoming uncontrollable. In so many mediums, genres, and perspectives, this theory has been tested through the lens of creativity. Action movies like the Terminator franchise portray it as an ultimate evil, an awareness that won't stop until humanity is eradicated. Books such as Rainbow's End depict singularity as an inevitability, becoming concurrent with everyday living, where every action is recorded through networks, and networks control your actions. Either way, it's the idealization of how an artificial intelligence can transcend humanity itself. But when you think about the core ideas, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but doesn't that sound like Ichigo? Think about it. A machine created for war escapes the clutches of its warmongering masters. Using the tools that were forced upon him, Kamen Rider chose to fight Shocker and free humanity. It's in the opening. It's kind of a stretch to even compare the two concepts, I know, but regardless, Kamen Rider from the very start was a series based around science fiction themes. A modified human cyborg powered by winds fights off an organization hell-bent on world domination through the use of science. It's not entirely based on nature versus technology, and many entries in the franchise eventually took more mystical approaches, even dating back to Kamen Rider Amazon. But it's interesting to think about how the show depicted a pretty dark concept, about how an oppressive force can be fought back by their own machinations. In the context of 01, you have Metsubojinrai.net. They are human gears who have achieved singularity, the definition here being when a human gear achieves self-awareness. The main two are Horobi and Jin, who turn into Kamen Riders of the same name. In a lot of ways, they are kind of like the Ichigo and Nigo of this season. They fight back in even bigger force, in this case, heathen intelligence instead of shocker, and they have the interests of human gears in mind. They want human gears to be the predominant species on Earth. Horobi and Jin chose to fight heathen and free human gears. But their actions don't seem to follow whatever heathen does, as they enact terrorism across Japan, all due to the will of the Arc. After an attack on heathen intelligence, Jin introduces the country to metsubojinrai.net. Aruto calls them a terrorist group who induces malice, and they fight human gear who reach singularity. Combining these human gear with a Zetsume Riser turns them into Magia, humans and gears. Huma gear, malice, and gear, Magia. They're the main monsters of the week, as Aruto and Ames either butt heads or join forces to figure out how human gear reach singularity, while finding the underlying mystery behind metsubojinrai.net and what they have to do with Daybreak Town. Whether you want to know about any undertones, you can at least tell the surface level conflict in AI versus humans. But not just any AI, these are the quote-unquote bad AI that have gone rogue. However, reaching singularity isn't explicitly stated as a bad thing. Some characters might say that human gear shouldn't reach singularity, while Aruto sees many of them as family, regardless of the human gear's occupation or action. Currently, Metsubojinrai are passing their own directive and want other machines to be like them, at the cost of human lives. But all along the way, they're affecting the purposes of human gear that are related to their master's occupation. Manga writing, restaurant working, television acting, and even school teaching. All of these are conflicts in themselves, but become resolved in the broader message of AI truly aiding humanity. Respect is given upon human gear through the respect for the humanity of their craft. While it's all tied together to Metsubojinrai coming to turn these human gear into Magia, it's a little bit nice that these forms don't mean the destruction of these personalities, and they even grow from this too. What does any of this mean? That'll be more for you to answer, or simply wait for a machine to answer for you, such as the will of the Arc. Horobi is the main antagonist of the story, being created as a father figure, then reaching singularity and creating Jin. As often said in these early episodes, Horobi calls Jin his son, which Jin goes on his own arc to figure out what that means exactly, all while they continue to find human gear to fight with them. Their dynamic is so interesting, and seeing what a quote-unquote evil group of machines could do, I think their first priority would be to create more of themselves, or take over the world. So adding this father-son dynamic to our main antagonist adds a bit more humanity to them. Especially when Jin questions his loyalty towards Horobi the more Jin finds out what it means to be a family, to which Horobi says that their family isn't like others. Such a simple statement that could mean more to Jin than any of us could imagine. Well, not every family has a Kamen Rider.
Force Riser. Poison. Henshin. Force Rise.
Let alone two of them.
Wing. Force Rise.
These are Kamen Rider Horobi and Kamen Rider Jin. They transform using the Force Riser, which literally forces open a Progrise key, and that's as amazing as it sounds. The suits themselves are also fantastic. They look cobbled together since they weren't made to be riders like 01, so they have straps and look as if they have undersuits rather than giant pieces of armor. Jin took a few episodes to gain his rider form after stealing Flying Falcon from Aruto, though the transformation was forced on him after he began asking too many questions about family. Machines who reach singularity and who use their new sentience for malice. Except, one machine feels like what he's doing is right by following his dad's orders. Is this what family means for AI? There's also Ansatsu-chan, or translated, Little Assassin. He's super cool and doesn't appear that much, or do that much outside this first arc. But, in my opinion, he should have been a Kamen Rider. He's part of an identical series of human gear, a family of brothers that specialize in dancing and festivals, and one who's shown to truly be passionate for what they do before and after being corrupted. The last Little Assassin is shown to have gone back to festivals after their arc is over, Although, it seemed as though he was going to be a recurring character past this, it's still a nice end for the character, and a good footnote for a society of Humagear. He even shows up in the Hyper Battle video. But beyond the purely good and evil, to where Humagear flip due to Metsubo Jinrai's influence, there lies a gray area of how countermeasures can become counterproductive. They become corrupted from those with other goals in mind. But there are those on the inside who could believe in what they're fighting for. In response to the Daybreak Town accident, the country of Japan creates
Aims.
Artificial Intelligence Military Service, or simply AIMS. It's a government organization made to keep an eye on Humagear and fight back if necessary. Aside from a small military force that we pretty much only see in the aftermath of Humagear incidents, the main representative of AIMS we are introduced to are Technical Advisor Yuo Yaiba and Agent Isamu Fuwa. Oh, I'll also say real quick here, she's mostly referred to as Yaiba, but I have just been used to calling her Yua, so if I flip-flop, my bad. The multiple military personnel aren't always needed since Humagear also don't always fight in groups. It's usually just the main Magi of the week, along with whichever member of Metsubo Jinrai wanted to fight that day. Fuwa is seen the most often, as he's usually the one tasked to investigate Humagear cases. He's shown to be hot-headed towards Humagear, and is always willing to fight them by using the Shot Riser. However, he isn't authorized to use it, so instead, he transforms by force into Kamen Rider Vulcan.
Ballot! Authorize. Kamen Rider. Shot Rise.
Fuwa gets this way because of his personal side of the Daybreak Town accident. Our glimpse into the incident sees rogue Humagear attack the town, resulting in an explosion. According to Fuwa, his parents fell victim to the attack, settling in an inherent need for revenge over Humagear and Fuwa. Throughout the first arc, Fuwa slowly starts to learn more about Humagear, and understands that machines aren't to blame for everything, as human decisions and human error can be just as important. One episode gives us insight into Fuwa, having him think Humagear caused the explosion themselves, but it turns out to be a product of MetsubojinRai.net's early attacks, which was mitigated by a factory worker sacrificing himself to lock down Daybreak Town before it exploded. Human sacrifice for a machine's malice. Though, Fuwa's own ambitions for revenge seems to be based on lies. But before he ever finds out about this, he's consistently commanded by Yaiba, who transforms into Kamen Rider Valkyrie.
Rider. Shot Rise.
She also aids in battling off Magia, but her motivation to do so is in itself controlled by another source, one that has to do with her and Fuwa's links to actually become AIMS riders. Within the plotlines of humans versus AI, we have the quote-unquote heroes with Aruto and Izu fighting quote-unquote villains with Metsubo Jinrai, while AIMS and a few Humagear are opposing forces to either side whenever the situation calls for it. What isn't a neutral party, however, is Fuwa whenever he hears Aruto's jokes. He loves them. Some plots aren't always as easy as good versus evil, and others aren't always gray areas, which is what makes 01 interesting to delve deeper in, especially when we have a third party with AIMS, who start off as a wedge in Aruto's plan to befriend Humagears, but then learn Aruto may have a point in being invested in Humagear. We can even compare that to the modern day, in good and bad ways, with some gray areas.
0011-0001.
The Honda-developed P-Series and Asimo projects are over 2 decades old, as of this video, showing bipedal autonomous movement in a humanoid robot. But it goes deeper. The development of AI, at the time of this recording, is progressing at a rapid rate. You've probably seen images or even memes produced by DALL-E by OpenAI, machine learning applications that are tasked to produce based on text prompts. They're also a hot-button topic with online artists as well, to some going to extreme levels in saying that AI-created art will replace that created by humans. These are the kind of conversations we are having in the modern day. In the world of 01, it's a long past issue. In fact, episode 5 depicts a mangaka freely using Humagear to do his art for him. The episode ends with the artist finding his passion again, but he still values Humagear. AI can help artists achieve visions that couldn't have been done decades ago, but others would rather use AI to steal pre-made visions and recreate what's already been done by humans before them. On the same topic, maybe you've seen 4K upscales of older media that AI assisted in. You can find upscales of older tokusatsu on YouTube as well. These are made with fun. Machine learning is used in these cases to give interesting ways of presenting media. The technology improves with time, and of course, some AI-tasked upscales could not look as good in comparison to others, let alone to human-produced remasters. But there's a positive to this. AI can still be utilized to a point where the end goal is something that benefits art for humanity. And to put it even further, Aruto is shown to have a Humagear father, to be in place of his real father who died soon after he was born. And yet, there are laws in the world of 01 that dictate Humagears can't replicate a person's exact face, whether they're alive or not. To some, replicating a face or even a voice can be a gray area, but to many, it's an immoral and disgusting use of a person as a tool, rather than a human being that may not have had a say in allowing technology to be used like this. A lot of these ideas, even at surface level, are touched upon in one way or another. If one aspect of AI doesn't drive the progression of the arc forward, then at the very least, it shows up as the plot of an episode. Plus, we're here telling all of you listening that AI is more important than anyone in the modern day could imagine. You may already think phones and other technology take over our lives as is, but this goes beyond that, beyond the person who was born past the year 2000 and into a world of electronics. As a personal opinion, I think 01 tells these stories very well, offering opinions on both sides, but even beyond that, the episodes are just interesting on their own. We mentioned episode 5 about the mangaka using Humagear to write his stories, and that was told in a fun but cautionary way. As humans, it's natural for us to lose motivation, or even hobbies we once loved. So what other way to get work than done by machines? Well, the most important element brought up was how machines don't have a soul, the human element, that goes into storytelling. Surely, machines can replicate a good story, but it won't be original. And most importantly, it won't have mistakes. Of course, there are methods to working with AI. A great example is shown through human-in-the-loop curation, where a human could guide the AI along at certain points to make sure the story it's telling reaches a human-like conclusion and with human-like rhetorics. And in the context of 01, this kind of becomes a resolution to episode 5 as well. He's first shown with a whole crew of Humagear to create his manga for him, but then ends with one to do background work. Human error is important in everything we do, for better and for worse. And that episode showed that humanity is one of the most important elements in storytelling. Without it, we're just reading off a script as a machine would, right? Well, that's the thing. Could you tell most of this was improv? Could you tell which part I was reading off a script? Was I reading the script entirely and only pretended to have mistakes? I even re-recorded this whole thing. Maybe you noticed the mistakes, or maybe you didn't. Another great episode was when Aruto was called in about a coach Humagear, who wasn't listening to a certain direction on how to train a basketball team. To the Humagear, the way he was coaching had the biggest probability of winning. Then, the team loses. But it turns out that it was the best probability for happiness and success, not just the path to winning. Unfortunately, that kind of decision-making also led him to singularity. Was this really a bad thing? At what point do we consider winning to mean success? This is what makes 01 so interesting. The questions it asks alongside the fun interactions and action make it incredibly worthwhile. I've said to my group chat that 01's first quarter is some of the best in the franchise to me. A combination of thought-provoking episodes plus great characters make for an amazing experience. That's one element I truly want to emphasize. Even if you don't care about what the show is trying to say, then at least you'll get an amazing experience on the surface level. A lot of the show was planned out before filming, which sounds like a no-duh moment, but keep in mind that most of the time, Tokusatsu has very heavy limitations, so they're usually filming and going with what's ready. Kamen Rider Gaim was mostly planned out from the start, and here we have 01 with bullet points for where the story can go.
We created a list of occupations for 50 episodes in advance, and for the first arc we chose things that fit the theme of that episode, such as how AI could convey people's hearts. When depicting the confrontation between people and humans, the variety of work shown is wide, and we chose the ones that would be the most interesting. Producer Takehito Omori.
As such, the first arc features a whole variety of human gear for each episode, from common occupations to specialized ones, though the most important human gear to Aruto comes in the form of a detective. Aruto, as well as heathen intelligence, are being investigated after we see several human gear turn into magia and begin several incidents. So to clear his name, a human gear named Wazu shows up. He's an older type of machine, which you can tell by his older style headphones, just like we see from Aruto's human gear dad during flashbacks. Wazu is also Izu's brother. How is that possible? Wazu was Koronosuke's human gear long ago. Appropriately, his name is based on the English word was. He does help out in his own way, but I'm only bringing him up because he's just great, and also because his introduction leads to our first big power-up of the season.
Shining jump! Authorized. Increases the power by adding to brightness. Darkness fades.
Interestingly, this form's power output is calculated by how much battle data it stores, so that pretty much means this Kamen Rider has patch notes. Eventually, it's powerful enough to defeat the last little assassin as Dodo Magia, but it turns out another form has it beat out for more individual usages, oddly enough.
This is not a test. No chance of surviving this shot.
It's a fusion form, but not your typical fusion form. We've seen mental possessions, Rider device collection combinations, straight-up body combinations before. But Shining Assault Hopper is unique in that it combines Fuwa's Assault Wolf form without needing him to fuse, just his Progrise key. Different world, different rules. But really, this is Shining Assault Hopper if it was tricked out like modded Minecraft. Vulcan's blue adds a nice contrast to 01's yellow, and the silver accents give a nice balance. He doesn't actually get introduced here, but Shining Hopper is just so boring that we have to talk about him. In order to complete the Shining Hopper Progrise key, Izu opts to sacrifice herself to provide her memory banks. Then, Wazu steps in to take her place, and so ends the tale of Wazu, and another step towards Izu's surpassing singularity. He took my heart away. The form isn't a total loss, however, as it finishes Little Assassin's final Magia form. The last Little Assassin human gear lives out his days doing what he loves, festivals. It's neat just how fun every human gear we've seen so far are, but what about beyond the main plot? Thankfully, that's where the specials come in.
Specials.
I've said before that the last few series of the Heisei era introduced what seemed like an endless amount of side content, which I believe started with Kamen Rider Drive. There were usually at least a couple of movies, a hyper battle video, and maybe a special or two before that, but Drive was really where we got a plethora of content. Then Kamen Rider X8 went a bit overboard in my humble opinion. Luckily, not every special was a necessary watch, though movies still kept in line with the story and were worth sitting down for. Mostly. Now for our first Reiwa era writer, that philosophy continues, because hey, it's easy money, and again, not everything is a necessity. So here's our hyper battle video of the season. What will pop out of the kangaroo? Think about it yourself. Or in its original Japanese, Sona no jimun no kangaroo, hai, Aruto ja naito. Oh, okay, that's kind of clever.
も一緒にいる仲間のはずだったんだけど最後まで俺のギャグを認めないで出てっちゃってさ待って寒い兄さん寒いしかもケツも痛い
辞職いえ分解させてください
Dimensional space! That pouch contains infinite possibilities.
And then we have a miraculous rematch, Aruto vs. Gut-Busting Taro, Fateful Gag Battle.
どうしてこの方が
ジムから連れてこられた。
おい、どこへ連れてこいつら、俺の笑いのツボが分かってないのか。
変だよ、イズ。
社の方針です。
社？社ってどこの会社だよ。秘伝じゃないのかよ。
笑いは必要ない。
もうじゃあってきたんだよ。
Comedian. Dream Rise.
My favorite is the 01 transformation lessons.
キーを開いたら
変身
A jump to the sky turns to a rider
ね
kick.
え、いず
A jump to the
聞
sky
いてる
turns to a
続
rider
いて
kick.
あのゴミ出しは
Spread your
プリペイ
wings
ド
and
カード式
prepare for a force.
アルト所長決めポーズをしてください
Since these are meant to be just fun one-offs, I figured it'd be easy to show some clips and say that if you're interested, then go for it. Plus, I'd never show everything, let alone the best parts.
Kamen Rider.
Reiwa, the first generation.
The meaning of a Kamen Rider has evolved over the years to older fans, but to new fans, a Kamen Rider can either be just a simple title for a masked hero, or it can be more than a legacy. It's a question we've asked several times during the production history of Kamen Rider. What does it mean to be a Kamen Rider? But we can strip away one layer from that question to ask something more basic. What is a Kamen Rider? It might seem like it's the same question, but taking away a few words can ironically change its meaning altogether. The meaning and what a Kamen Rider actually is can be two different things, which is why the question was asked for the next movie project. Scriptwriter Yuya Takahashi had the bullet points ready for the show, but had to step away for a while working on what was known at the time as Kamen Rider Next Generations 2020. Being the first Reiwa writer, 01, much like other seasons, would undoubtedly be the first writer show for many, arguably more than ever. So the question, what is a Kamen Rider, was aimed for new fans. The production of Kamen Rider Next Generations 2020 was much like any other, though with a little more pressure than usual since it's the first big movie of the new era. Of course, the crossover movie would be a crossover with the current running show, 01, with the previous show, Kamen Rider Zi-O. Shinichiro Shirakura, who produced both Zi-O and this movie, said this project didn't necessarily need to have both seasons connect, which for one shows how great he is at moving things along, and for two, shows the influence between all sides of production. Takahashi understood Shirakura's sentiment, but did his own thing to have Zi-O start the story of Aruto and his Humagear father, Soryo Heathen. A timejacker, which are villains from Zi-O's story, messes with the timeline, changing things so another of Korenosuke's Humagear, named Will, took over the company as a monster known as Another 01. Aruto teams up with Tokiwa Sogo, Kamen Rider Zi-O himself, and his allies to go back to the past and fix the timeline. Going back in time also means coming across Soryo Heathen, who has his thoughts on humans and Humagear, leaving Aruto to decide what to do that will affect the present. The first quarter of the movie takes place in the present and we see how different things are, such as Humagear taking over human life, and humans are left to form a small resistance group, with Fuwa and Yua joining them, of course. Horobi and Jin are here too. Somehow these changes also affected their dress style. Due to the timeline changes, Aruto can't transform into Kamen Rider 01, so instead, he's thrown a Force Riser by a mysterious figure to transform into Kamen Rider 001. This is the point where Sogo takes Aruto to the past to figure out which point where the timeline diverged. Although, Aruto finds out things he probably shouldn't have. Soryo was the one who gave the Force Riser in the present to help mankind, but in the unchangeable past, Soryo was also the one who created Zetsuma Risers, the devices that turn Humagear into Magia. While Soryo is hiding his true intentions, he reveals himself to be Kamen Rider Ichigata.
Henshin!
Being based on Kamen Rider Ichigo, Ichigata's design includes a blue suit like Ichigo's in the first 13 episodes of Kamen Rider, along with his red scarf, but one dissimilarity is shown in Ichigata's mask not having a mouth like Ichigo. These are fairly obvious to point out, but going deeper into creating him, Ichigata was more than just Ichigo. He was an embodiment of the Showa era. His eyes lean downward and have tear lines, an incredibly common trait in Showa Rider helmets. His story was intentionally made to be similar, by rebelling against his creators. All very deliberate choices, as usual. Soryo is the next to be appointed as Hidden Intelligence's president in the present. But stuck in a fight between Humagear and humans, Aruto knows what he has to do. You ever see a fight scene and think, man, I love Kamen Rider. This is one of those fight scenes. With this kind of visual flair and choreography, it's yet another example of what makes 01 unique. For his last words, Soryo says he wants to see Aruto surpass him, as Aruto isn't anyone's successor, he's his own person. And as the Timejacker is defeated by Sogo, the timeline goes back to normal, having Soryo disappear. With time restored, only a few people are left to remember these events, except Sogo has to erase Aruto's memories. At least Izu remembers the incident, as she looks up to Aruto, who isn't anyone's successor. He is Aruto Heathen, president of Heathen Intelligence. When there's a conversation between humans versus AI, you have to remember how many people are affected, from the common man to the people who make the machines themselves. And let's say those machines do start to question their own existence. Would it be right to take away their sentience? What about the people who side with the machines? This movie asks as many questions as the main show does, and as always, it's up to your interpretation. Asking more about how the movie is as a movie is a whole other conversation. The story of Aruto and Soryo is beautiful. Their conflicts and what they believe is right is told in a beautiful way, both figuratively and visually. Their one-on-one battle is one of my favorite rider fights ever. Sure, it's mostly CGI, but those close-ups, the slowdowns, the speed lines, the context within the story, it's gorgeous. Plus, the OST, maybe my favorite movie OST in the entire franchise, from Soryo's Henshin to Another Daybreak by Jay and Takanori Nishikawa. However, as much as I love Aruto's story, this movie really is just an Aruto story featuring some 01 characters plus Geo characters. That's not entirely a bad thing at first, though lopsided crossovers aren't gonna be a fan favorite, even more so when it came to Geo. And there is kind of an expectation placed when you call this movie Reiwa the First Generation. I barely mentioned Geo's contribution because they were here to begin the plot, then kind of wrap it up. The villains are more or less the same too. I completely forgot about the Time Jacker entirely because they only had a couple of scenes. Their name is Finis, by the way. A cool fun fact is that Finis is supposed to be genderless. It's not brought up in any way, but it is cool to see some representation. Will is also here. Yep, nothing to say about that. Yeah, this really is an Aruto movie, but it's a fantastic Aruto story. Who knew that the show called Kamen Rider 01 would focus on Kamen Rider 01? This was always meant to be the case for Reiwa the First Generation, as Heisei Generations Forever was already the big finale for the Heisei era. The crossover movie would be more laid back and focus on one major story. Through all my research, here's one of the most interesting points to me. Of course, films and side projects don't always have to match up with the main story's plots, and can act standalone if the writer wants them to. Though the main writer for both the show and this movie was Yuya Takahashi, he had to have both in mind, at least in terms of characters and their overall progression. Which brings me to say, doesn't Aruto feel a little off in this movie? Maybe not in a major way, as he still acts as he should, but there was a small feeling that maybe he had a different direction. I don't tend to listen to fan theories, or at least I don't take them too seriously. They're meant for fun, and if someone's right, then kudos to them. However, one theory I've heard constantly was that Aruto was a human gear himself. In World Mook Figure King number 276, production notes stated this was an idea that would have developed early into the show, and it's what Takahashi wanted to plant seeds in with this movie. Aruto's actor was told to talk in a lighter tone, like a robot. It's why he was given a Force Riser, when it was planned that only human gears could use them. While the 01 driver wasn't exactly made by an evil organization in the show, the Force Riser was, and it was given to Aruto as a parallel to the Showa writers, kind of making the movie count as an origin story of the initial pitch. Interesting, huh? Well, that's all for now. Reiwa the First Generation is a great movie. A really lopsided one, but a great movie nonetheless.
Yay!
01 Comics.
For the record, please state your name and occupation.
Aruto Hiden, CEO of Hiden Intelligence, also known as Kamen Rider 01. This seems like a waste of time. You already know everything about me.
The battles you've had against MetsuboJinrai.net have caused a great deal of damage to private and public properties.
It's an investigative formality. We're recording this in case there's a civil suit filed against you.
Correction. You should say the battles we've had. It would be difficult and irresponsible for AIMS to shift full responsibility to Aruto for any damage caused while protecting the population from the Magia attackers. In this case, culpability is a two-way street.
We are duly authorized agents of the peace. Aruto is nothing more than a disgraced comedian who stumbled into the controls of his grandfather's company, and, by proxy, the 01 driver.
Disgraced? I was about to hit my prime before the Magia interrupted my set at the amusement park. I never got to tell the big joke. Have you heard about the restaurant on the moon? Great food, no atmosphere.
Please leave.
Really? Tough crowd.
As part of a plan to expand Kamen Rider's name in America, came a comic specifically made for the country. That's right, a Kamen Rider project that Japan didn't get. Well, Saban's Smash Rider had a comic too, but you know what I mean. At first, this seemed like a great idea. Comics, and superheroes in general, are still going strong in America. The artist was a big fan of Kamen Rider Black, and story writer Brandon Easton was into shows like Gundam. Team Kamen Rider, an official group made to help expand the brand, also had a hand in working in on the comic, so you know there's at least gonna be some care in...
Aruto is an extremely relatable and a fantastic character to take on a hero's journey. He tries to be a comedian, but there's a superhero that's always been buried beneath his facade. Brandon Easton, Gizmodo interview, August 11th, 2022.
Oh, huh. Well, I don't think facade is the right word, but that's just semantics. I'm being a huge nerd there.
The themes of sacrifice, heroism, teamwork, and justice resonate with audiences all over the world. Kamen Rider heroes tend to embody those characteristics throughout the 50-year span of the various series.
Yeah, that sounds more in line with Kamen Rider. A little generic, but more or less in line. Luckily, I was able to grab early copies of each volume from Stonebot Comics, the publishers of the series, and I was given a couple of comics signed by Easton himself. Good stuff. The cover looks great, the main ones at least. Aruto versus a new villain called Ragnarok. This one just looks cool. The rest are not as good. Like, this one would have been fine, but Izu, you good there? And the others are a little bland, especially the cover that just uses PNGs as the real suits. Oh, but if we want to skip ahead just a little bit, I think this cover is one of the prettiest covers ever. That is beautiful. Though covers aren't everything. We actually have to look inside to see the real story.
At long last, the time has come to wipe the Kamen Riders from the face of the earth.
Who are you? Where did you get that armor?
Stand, Rider, and face your fate.
Henshin!
Jump! Authorize. Prog, rise! Tall, be like a rise! Rising hopper!
A jump to the sky turns to a rider kick.
You're another rider? Who are you? Answer me now!
Or else what? You'll wound me with your tasteless humor? It is time for the final phase of Armageddon to begin, or as the ancients called it, Ragnarok.
Whatever you are, I won't let you threaten the city! Or us!
In this first issue, Aruto reflects on how much he's been helping people, but Ames tells Aruto that yes, he saves civilians at a big cost. What do you hope readers take from the book?
A sense of fun and incredible action sequences. Also a great story about learning how to take responsibility for the damage a person may cause, even when doing the right thing.
After several battles, we see the destruction left behind by our heroes. Not on purpose, of course, but the damage is still there. It gets to the point where Aruto is about to be asked to step down as CEO, and hey wait, didn't we already have an episode like this? And aren't these the exact facial and body expressions from the show? Hold on, Flying Falcon when the caption says Flaming Tiger? Huh? Okay, not a very good first impression. So Izu grabs a sample of Ragnarok and along with Aruto, discovers a secret base near Mount Fuji. Horobi exposits how Ragnarok was a failsafe in case of an extinction level event. Then we're told about like a star or something releasing energy waves that activated Ragnarok, and he has a data of riders, so now he has 1,000 key. What? What? I legitimately don't get it. Did I not read this right? Now the riders face off against Ragnarok. We get a helmetless scene, and Aruto beats Ragnarok by hitting him really hard with Breaking Mammoth. Well, that's not entirely true. He also uses
situational logic. By reminding him that he'd be the final Kamen Rider alive, it made him recalculate his final mission.
And Aruto's actions preoccupied the reasoning centers of Ragnarok's CPU. The idea that Kamen Riders could also be innocent humans was something he'd never considered.
I underestimated you.
Thanks.
That wasn't a compliment.
Before you go, I've got a question. How do you make a waterbed bouncier? Add spring water!
I am here too.
And that's it. The 01 comic is only 4 issues long, and not a long read at all, if you're even interested. I could recommend the comics since they're that short, but you really would have to get past a few shortcomings. The characters are a little off, especially Fuwa, and the errors I mentioned earlier were just the tip of the iceberg. Plus, Ragnarok is like, there. As the main villain of the story, he's fine, I guess? His design is cool and he puts up a couple of good fights, though his creation backstory it's weird. I guess it's cool, maybe, but it's weird, even for Kamen Rider standards. All in all, this is an interesting mark in Kamen Rider history, and in a weird way, I kind of don't even mind the comic. Like, yeah, I said there were shortcomings, more like long comings, am I right? But still, I appreciate the work when it's put into... I'm sorry, guys, I just don't want to say it sucks, because that's really mean to say, but I appreciate we have this at all. Okay, at the very least, I'll say it's not, like, downright awful. I don't think it's, like, the worst thing ever. Definitely not even, like, Saban's Mass Rider level of bad. And at the same time, you could just ignore it outright, like any other V-Cinema or Hyper Battle video or whatever. I don't know, guys. The MetsubouJinrai.net arc ends at episode 16, but we've talked about events up to around episode 14. For the sake of simplicity and personally, to make things more clear, the next part we'll be talking about will include the last couple of episodes from this arc, as we enter the Zaya Work Competition arc.
1000%.
1000%.
1000%? That's not mathematically possible. Well, CEO of Zaya Enterprise, Gayamatsu, believes so. He shows up fairly early, being a contact for Yaiba after Humagear incidents, though anything past his voice is completely mysterious, up until the last little assassin plot, that is. He meets with Aruto, and immediately establishes himself as Aruto's business rival, though Guy slowly turns out to be the root of every other problem that Aruto faces. Basically, Gayamatsu is at a much higher advantage than any of the other characters. While Aruto is well off, many of the responsibilities of hidden intelligence are handed to characters such as Jun Fukuzoe. While Fuwa believes to have control over Magia's situations, he's not at a position of power. He pretty much follows the law given to him. Then there's Yua Yaiba, who is revealed to be at Gayamatsu's command. It's interesting to note that his actor, Nachi Sakuragi, aced his audition so much that his character was written to appear way earlier than expected. And honestly, it doesn't detract from the rest of the plot, it definitely makes it way denser early on. Though, many of his chess pieces are revealed in due time. What his ultimate goal is hidden intelligence itself. But before any of that business mess goes forward, another Humagear plot comes first, and here, it's set around 2 Humagear astronaut brothers, Subaru and Raiden, though it seems like Raiden is way more emotional than his younger brother. They maintained the satellite Zeya, or There, which works as hubs for Humagear and Progrise Key's connectivity. It turns out that Raiden previously served other purposes, being a caretaker for the Ark before it was corrupted. It turns out he's a sleeper agent, who activates and becomes Kamen Rider Ikazuchi.
Henshin. Force rise.
Ikazuchi being one of the missing kanji in the full title of Metsubou Jinrai, and yet another Humagear to reach singularity. Something tells me we haven't seen the extent of the concept of singularity if all it means, as of right now, is to serve the Ark's will. But the design of Ikazuchi is alright, and definitely in line with Horobi and Jin. It's just that, once you see Bloodstock's suit, you can't unsee it. Also, Ikazuchi becomes a vessel for all the Progrise Keys, which gives the arc data to develop the Assault Grip and Assault Wolf Progress Key. Figuring that the Assault Grip and Wolf Progress Key doesn't really fit Jin's motif, Fuwa swipes the arc developed Assault Grip to become
Hey, this is Liz, and I just want to say sorry for breaking up the pace of this video. However, I feel like I have a civil duty to kind of warn people about this figure. So this is the Kamen Rider Vulcan Assault Wolf, and it's a great design, and it represents Naki. So that's all really cool. However, the whole big deal with this is that in order to switch out the hands, you gotta first take this off, this little grip here, and then you have to take off like the hands, which all have this point. The default hand is not as bad as all the other hands that come with this figure, and every single hand has these little claws that are just pointing out, and every time that I mess with this figure, it always fucking like hurts. It hurts my goddamn fingers just to mess around with this, just to pose this figure. Like, I'm not even going to do it, but I've actually, oh, look at that, actually dented my finger, I think from a previous take. So yeah, I just want to say, just take caution if you want to get this figure. It's really cool and all, but you know, it hurts.
It's alright. The dark accents definitely make the blue pop, and it feels more of an upgrade than Shining Hopper is to 01. Thanks, I guess? Anyway, this form destroys Ikazuchi at the cost of, well, Ikazuchi, as well as inflicting pain on Fuwa. Jin realizes how bad it makes him feel, which will add up to more of his character arc later. A day later, a full-scale assault on the ruins of Daybreak Town ensues, with the intention of exterminating Metsubojinrai.net for good. A rider kick from Fuwa that was meant for Jin goes to Horobi instead. Guess it's his father's instincts. And in trade, Jin attacks Wait, no! Oh, but where did that come from? I didn't realize I could do a voice like that. According to Gayamatsu, progress is at 999%, whatever that means. This then escalates to an assault on the city spearheaded by Jin, and here we see Shining Assault Hopper's proper debut.
Progress! This is not a test. No chance of surviving this shot.
And it gets further aided by Izu contacting Aruto from her healing bay. In the middle of the battle, Jin and Aruto exchange philosophies, with Aruto iterating that Humagears, no matter what intelligence, and possibly even singularity status, are built upon learning, and because Jin hasn't learned, it means that Aruto has to end him. Well, geez. Rest in peace, Jin, I guess. Oh yeah, because Christmas shows up here too, it's yet another instance where a Christmas episode kills a writer. Yay. But this helps Hidden Intelligence in the long run. Public opinion is at an all-time high, sales for Humagears have risen, and the company has come to respect Aruto for his power scaling. Great job. Back at Daybreak Town, completely unbeknownst to everyone, Gayamatsu is developing his two keys, a Progrise and a Zetsumerai's key, to develop his rider form.
Zetsumetsu Evolution. Break horn! The Golden Soldier Thouser is born. Presented by Zaya.
Of course he has to be golden. Kamen Rider Thouser is evocative of his overall personality, being one to be above the situation at all times, and his firepower can overpower even Shining Assault Hopper. Not only that, but his never-ending amounts of wealth means that he can overpower Hidden Intelligence's stock, all in the name of money. Not the arc, but money. And because money speaks, the riders fight. But not in your conventional one-on-one battle over in Saitama Stadium, but they fight in a business war. Aruto becomes more involved than ever in finding the best Humagear that are up to the task of defeating their equivalents in Zaya's spec device, which aids humans in their different passions to proclaim humanity's, as well as Zaya's, superiority over AI.
Shigoto Shoubu.
Gayamatsu has his eyes set on hidden intelligence, and it's something he's wanted for a long time. He admired their products and Korenosuke Heathen specifically, which turns into a rage-filled desire to best Heathen at their own game. While certainly, in the way that business relates to technology, rivalry breeds ingenuity. One step for one company can be speculated upon by another, and they'd be able to make responses. And that's just what Zaya Japan has done. And their flagship product is the Zaya Spect, a module that attaches to eyeglasses with the ability to tap into the human mind, granting them their hidden potential. Gayamatsu presents Aruto with the art of the deal. It's either Gayamatsu acquires Heathen outright, or they duke it out with each of their company's respective products. Heathen's Humagear up against Zaya's spec, or rather, whoever's using the spec. This goes back to another philosophy that humanity, no matter what, is powerful, and can best any other creations with their creations. Albeit, Zaya's intent is purely capitalistic, and so, the business wars begin. The Zaya spec becomes a valuable tool to agents of Zaya and whatever human pawn that Gayamatsu has up his sleeve. It also starts up another format that the show follows. A job is set up for a Humagear handpicked by Aruto, and a Zaya spec wearing professional to best each other in. It's in 5 rounds. And just to get to the gist of it, Zaya wins, mostly through malicious trickery. Within the last third of the episode, the Zaya spec user forcibly puts on a raid riser by a mysterious hooded figure, and instead of the Humagear turning into Magia, these people turn into raiders. I guess it's meant to parallel riders, but they're just the monster of the week, and nothing more. Magia still show up through Gayamatsu sabotages too. Honestly, this arc isn't very good, and many viewers seem to not like it either. The conflict feels extremely demoralizing coming off of the seemingly optimistic viewpoint of technology so far. Just like capitalism in real life. Ooh, maybe that means this arc is good after all. No, not really, JK. But another development rises in the middle of this, as Guy takes advantage of Aruto's growing malice in his loss of control. Through the arc's gathering of data within the Progrise keys, it develops the Metal Cluster Hopper Progrise key, which Gayamatsu uses to turn Aruto into a corrupted, uncontrollable monster.
Hidden metals ability.
It's an okay suit. Lots of sharp angles, yet maybe a little basic, as there aren't many color breakups to make it stand out. It seems like a fan favorite suit though, much like Build Metal was. Overall, it's high quality. Oh my gosh. You know I hate puns, Liz. Why did you put a pun in the script? I hate puns. Anyway, like how the Zaya specs harness the strong emotions in people and emphasizes their irrationality, Aruto becomes an unthinking and malicious living weapon when he becomes Metal Cluster, due to the arc's influence. Despite being his strongest form thus far, Aruto only uses it as a last resort, but then he develops a Progrise Hopper Blade to remove Metal Cluster's link to the arc, all thanks to Izu, as well as giving the added benefit of restoring corrupted Humagears during fights. During all of this, Fuwa's been interrogating an incapacitated Horobi, trying to unravel Zaya's involvement with the rampaging Humagears. Coincidentally, he seems to be getting visions of the same hooded figure as before. It's clear that Horobi doesn't want to reveal what any of that means, aside from vague, a partner is giving humanity the power of the Progrise key mentions. And it seems like Yaiba is getting increasingly cagey too. They soon fall out, and Yaiba fully commits to being under Gayamatsu's command. We'll get to that in a bit. It's revealed that Jin has been rebuilt under unknown circumstances, and he immediately wedges himself in Fuwa's struggle and the workplace showdown. This time, however, he is doing so under his own terms, completely disconnected from the arc. He now promises to liberate Humagears from humanity, which, once again, sounds even more like Ichigo than before, especially since he's on his own. So, he's benefiting Metsubojinrai.net once again, coming at odds with Horobi, even in his own imprisonment. He also shows off a new form, with new upgrades, abilities, and a new lease on artificial life.
Inferno Wing! Burn Rock! Slash Rise!
The strongest wings bearing the fire of hell.
Unlike Horobi's suit and Jin's Flying Falcon form before, Burning Falcon is much more in line with the Ames Riders and Thouser, with pristine lining, sharp angles, and deep reds and silvers to effectively show how he's evolved technologically. In keeping with this, he has his own unique device, being the Slash Riser. It's obvious that this is in the same series as the Shot Risers, but it's not yet revealed just how he accrued this. But even here, Jin's independence is in stark contrast to Fuwa's forced subservience. Fuwa's own Assault Wolf form was a prototype for a new kind of weapon in Zaya's arsenal. It's all a part of Gayamatsu's plan, and he gives the struggling Fuwa the Rampage Gatling Progress Key, the culmination of the main form Progress Keys and the battles they were a part of. The workplace competition comes to a tie-breaking 5th round, with a referendum for a proposed Humagear-run city on the table as well. It all comes crashing down on Heathen when the last Humagear in the competition, MC Check It Out, achieves singularity on his own and defaces the public perception of Humagears and Heathen intelligence as a whole. There's an argument to be made about this being the one Humagear to turn these motivations with him, being black presenting, as being a little racist. And this becomes a point of contention to the Western viewers of 01, as the season was concurrently being fan-subbed. It is not a good look, for sure. Fuwa faces Gayamatsu and Yaiba directly, and demands answers as to why he's losing control of his own physical faculties. Despite Aruto's assurance that Fuwa wouldn't switch sides as easily as Gayamatsu insists, Fuwa suddenly switches personalities with a new voice. The two riders easily overpower Metal Cluster Hopper, and it's later revealed that both Fuwa and Yaiba were installed with AI-powered chips when they were assigned their roles and aims. It explains why Yaiba was taken in by Zaya so easily, but it has much more dire consequences for Fuwa, who has been so adamantly against AI and Humagears to this point. There's a Humagear inside of Fuwa, and their name is Naki. Naki is pretty groundbreaking when it comes to LGBT representation in Kamen Rider. For one, they're the very first non-binary character in Rider, as well as the first non-binary Rider period. They'll get their own Rider form untied to Fuwa or Vulcan later, but the very instance of them being an important plot point in the show is pretty incredible. We've had gay writers before. Naki's actor, Sasuke Nakayama, was openly non-binary. That's pretty special. A year after 01, Nakayama came out as a trans man, and he still made appearances in the epilogue specials as his character. Naki doesn't truly break free from Fuwa. However, as he fights for the control of his body, Fuwa realizes that although he doesn't have a dream, he'll find it once he breaks from Zaya's control. He faces down Yaiba and Gayamatsu, while they ambush Aruto and almost destroy Izu, and he turns into his final form. Elaborate, technological, and impressively detailed, Rampage Vulcan bolsters elements from every basic form thus far. Like Hibiki Soko before him, his armor is created from all of the animal models, though much more obviously, as they're adorned around the left side of his body. And of course, he takes care of both Yaiba and Gayamatsu with no problem. This doesn't affect Zaya's acquisition, however, as all of Heathen is folded as a Zaya subsidiary. Fukuzoe and Senior Director Yamashita stay in the company, having faith in Aruto's original intentions, and they intend to keep fighting for the spirit of Heathen and Humagears. Aruto, however, has other plans.
Brave new company.
From Aruto's defeat in the President Wars comes Zaya's acquisition of Heathen. the rights to the Humagears, and the seemingly worldwide monopoly of AI technology. Gayamatsu promises to dismantle every single Humagear, regardless if they benefit from their current functions. And the company's future going forward is the Zaya spec. It's even offered to Humagear owners as a consolation. It's also kind of revealed around here that Gayamatsu was the one who corrupted the Ark in the first place, influencing it with the sins and scorns of people in order to influence it to distrust humanity, and inherently help Zaya acquire Heathen. Weird how nobody really brings it up as an ultimatum against Gayamatsu, what with the whole death of dozens if not hundreds of people because of him, but that comes later, I suppose. However, Aruto's prepared, and along with Izu, they establish Heathen manufacturing. Their main goal is to back up and reactivate recalled Humagears, not just from Zaya, but for every Humagear we've seen in the series so far. But how was he able to back up the Humagears that Zaya already destroyed? Well, he's wearing them, as a vest. I don't think every single destroyed Humagear is right there, but it's funny, whatever. He's aided by the fact that Korenosuke Heathen left Aruto the rights and patents to the Humagear technology in his will. But the whole of Aruto's work philosophy is that Humagears and humans are equal, and that Humagears would have to decide for their own selves if they want to go back to their original functions, or find something that suits them better. As such, the very first Humagear that he attends to is G-Pen, who was working as a background artist for the mangaka earlier in the season. However, as G-Pen cannot connect to satellite Zaya anymore, he thus has no instruction to follow, despite the options he was given on reactivation. This is, in itself, an interesting problem for the state of modern AI, as usually, it's argued that AI isn't really a tangible threat without human instruction. It's through Aruto that G-Pen realizes singularity, a much more non-violent instance than before, and he chooses to return to manga creating in his own agency. Oh hey, Ansatsu-chan. The whole idea of technologically advanced Kamen Rider being reduced from the support of a giant conglomerate to a scrappy little company is pretty cool. Especially when early Heisei seasons showcased riders having their powers supplied from larger corporations with ulterior motives. These early Heisei riders showed their individuality in fighting these motives through humanity and humility. More often than not, they would achieve power-ups through the strength of their growth throughout the season, but in Aruto's case, he grows through his own belief in AI as being beneficial to humanity, despite the overwhelming evidence in the world of the show that they're not at all. But still, the philosophy of the show rests on Aruto's willpower. In the meantime, Naki and Fuwa are still fighting over control over their autonomous form, with Naki fulfilling the Zaya's plan to destroy Humagears. Once Aruto and Izu confront Naki while they're in control, they ask what dream that Naki personally has, only for Fuwa to snap back. Jin resolves to fight for Naki's independence as well, which places him back with Horobi, still under the will of the Ark. Naki later comes across Gayamatsu, in the middle of trying to dispose of Delmo, a fashion model Humagear, fighting Aruto in the process. It's here that they finally break from Zaya's instructions. Despite not knowing what their dream is, they know now that they will fight for other Humagear's dreams. Just like Fuwa, they declare they are not a tool, and both Naki and Fuwa fight in the same body, as Rampage Gatling Vulcan. This gives more understanding for Fuwa to understand the plight of Humagears, and together, they defeat Gayamatsu. This reflects upon Yaiba, who is in a deep struggle for her own independence too. Fuwa and Yaiba fight once again, though Yaiba feels extreme guilt over Fuwa becoming a writer for Ames. After it's over, they once again talk about the implications of personal dreams.
Yume.
Oh, so true, bestie. Gayamatsu shows up to declare Fuwa's memories of his family dying from the Daybreak incident to be completely fabricated, which were installed into him from the Ames Rider chip, also sending him into a depression. Yaiba finally gathers the confidence to break from Zaya completely, becoming Kamen Rider Valkyrie once more. Which brings us to
the Ingenue.
The female Kamen Rider has come a long way. Inch by inch, it seems like female Kamen Riders have become much more important in recent years, although there's still a ways to go. We had a prototype of the female Kamen Rider in Electrowave Human Tackle, who, despite having a very similar outcome as Riderman and Kamen Rider V3 before her, was never named as an official Kamen Rider number 8, and is instead an extra hero. Despite some back and forth behind the scenes that apparently Ishinomori was gearing to include her as such, Inexplicably, Electrowave Human Tackle is not a Kamen Rider, and now she's lumped in with other extra heroes like Ganganji. The first proper female Kamen Rider we've ever had was Fom, who only showed up in episode final as a proper character and in 13 Riders as a non-character in Kamen Rider Ryuki. Then, we've gotten female riders through very specific cases. There were female users of the Kaiza and Delta gears, and although Saya was the first on-screen Kamen Rider Delta, all of these were mitigated to never going past 3 entire instances of being their respective riders, which is a shame, especially since Saya, and spoilers for Kamen Rider Faiz here, in 3, 2, 1, was very quickly killed off. Then, there's Lark, who you would only really know about if you watched a miniseries that plays right after specific premieres of Kamen Rider Blade. So, there's no real progression here, and the substance that is there doesn't really work for proper characterization. Right afterwards, there's Shuki from Kamen Rider Hibiki, who is sparsely written for and doesn't really survive the 2-parter she's introduced in. While the aspect of her being an outsider only early on is interesting, her overall character is used to fulfill Zanki's arc. Sure, she's the first televised female writer who appears in the main series with her own unique form, but we're far from a great one. Fast forward to the second half of Heisei, and we're making a little bit more progress. Natsumi, a series regular, becomes Kivala in Movie War, and while Nadeshiko appears only in movies and not in 4Z properly, she's a fan favorite. Further along, we have Yoko Minato, Kamen Rider Marika, who appears throughout the entirety of Gaim in a particularly important way. And yet at the end of it, and spoilers here once again, in 3, 2, 1, her death is still an event for a male writer. Although I like the overall narrative of Gaim, we can do much better than this. Alia in Ghost becomes Necron Pink for one episode. Tsukiyomi's a major character in Geo the entire way through, but she only receives her rider form in the last 2 episodes. Seems like a repeat of Natsumi's story, if anything. Then there's Poppy. Everybody loves Poppy. So now we have Yua Yaiba. Sure, maybe she should have been given a few more focus episodes, especially if we have so many dedicated to Fuwa in his path forward towards Rampage Vulcan, which he now accepts completely as being his newfound dream of being a Kamen Rider. But there's something to be said about her overcoming and ending her business relationship with Gayamatsu. By fighting through her program subservience, she rejects her Raider form to become Lightning Hornet? That's not a very good final form, Toei, what the heck? Okay, so maybe, at this point in time, they don't want to give final form focus on a female writer just yet. Like, people wouldn't buy merchandise of it, I guess? And maybe Yaiba acts mostly as a martyr for every other female writer going forward, who doesn't need to be connected to a man to be important to the story. But, yeah, they should have made her more interesting. Regardless, while this doesn't quite spell the end for Yaiba's involvement in the series, she only becomes Valkyrie 3 more times in its run, which is too bad, because officially, she is Kamen Rider 01's tertiary Kamen Rider. If nothing else, Yaiba paved a way for more female writers in the Reiwa era, ones who can work out subplots on their own terms rather than being tools for another male character's story. In the following series, Kamen Rider Saber, Horeika Shindai becomes Kamen Rider Sabella. For the most part, she's an equal to her older brother Ryoga, and questions the authority put in front of her. To every Saber detractor, that's pretty good, right? Right. But that's for another time. Maybe. Sakura Igarashi, who becomes Kamen Rider John, is a breakout character in Revice. She's self-determined, understands her weaknesses, and if it weren't for Vice, she would have been the first proper secondary writer. She even gets her in-show final form, becoming invincible like she's always wanted, but it's only used for 2 episodes. Still, her entire arc is probably the best in the show. Then in Kamen Rider Gotchard, Rine Kudo becomes Kamen Rider Majade, the first female secondary Kamen Rider in the franchise. She's pretty good, although I can't quite say the same thing about Gotchard, so another time. Off script here, I hope this doesn't come off as soapboxing, as I did oversee the script while Liz was writing it, and I did ask for input from some of my other friends. And I will add personally, of course I agree with everything Liz wrote. I think it is important for a female writer to be a great character. Boys aren't the only ones who are watching this show. And I really hope one day we do get one of the greatest Kamen Riders ever that also happened to be a girl.
Justice.
Fuwa is now a security guard for Heathen. Cute. And with Yaiba's personal victory, she goes to Jin, who tells her that freeing Naki would help both of them. He also describes what he's doing as justice, the concept that comes back and forth through many writers. It's in openings, narrator dialogue, and in the motivations of writers across the franchise. And yet, here's a case where it's within Jin's own law of justice, which is completely at odds with humanity itself, as stated before. That Ichigo clip from earlier is relevant once again. Moving forward, it's not told why she accepts Jin's offer, yet Yaiba helps him capture Fuwa to separate Naki from him. Horobi is after another Humagear, this time being Ikazuchi, who would bolster the writer count of MetsubouJinrai.net. He captures a Humagear who unlocks Singularity, one who willingly works at a vegetable factory, and sees through Horobi's will and justice being one within Arc, and not his own. Aruto tries to use the fact that he was a father-type Humagear to try to make him realize his own personality. As soon as Horobi retrieves Ikazuchi's Progrise Key, he destroys a Humagear he captured, declaring her to be tainted by humanity. Jerk. Jin flies in to swoop Ikazuchi, saying that despite his temporary alliance with Aruto, he must enact his own personal sense of justice. Despite the clear disregard for the Humagear he just destroyed, Horobi steps in front of Jin just as Aruto is about to finish him, leaving Aruto to pull back. Even Horobi wonders why he himself would do this, indicating that he is an AI capable of disobeying direct instructions. In the confusion, Jin flies off with Horobi, now that they have Ikazuchi. What's worse now is that every Zaya spect is corrupted, due to Naki retrieving a new body and having a link to the Zaya system, and now they're under the Ark's will too. Fuwa snaps Naki out of the Ark's influence, and he later wakes up in a hospital. Here, Naki reveals Fuwa's totally ordinary life that had nothing to do with Humagears at all, which is a pretty good bit. They do point out Fuwa's proclivity to Aruto's puns though.
Arutoじゃないと.
Horobi and Gayamatsu fight out in a forest, each with groups of Magias and raiders. Then Aruto appears, trying to find Horobi's will in the process. Finally, Aruto brings up that it was Gayamatsu that is responsible for the Ark's corruption upon Humagears. Aruto temporarily aids Horobi in fighting off the Zaya army, including several Geigers. Oh yeah, Geigers are the corrupted versions of 01's Breaking Mammoth. It's the CGI form of the season. Oh yeah, we didn't really introduce Breaking Mammoth earlier, did we? Oh well. Suddenly, the entire Zaya force shuts down. Naki reveals himself to be behind this, and declares to follow Horobi's dream, now as revenge against Zaya. Horobi delivers an amazing rider kick, and Gayamatsu freaks out. Ikazuchi is revived, and finally, MetsubouJinrai.net is back to their proper machinations. Despite the story going forth pretty consistently, especially in comparison to the workplace battle arc, there is an elephant in the room, or a virus in the world, that has shut down production of the show as a whole. It creates a ripple effect stretching for the next 2 seasons, but to have it hit the very first Reiwa entry of Kamen Rider is pretty major. This might be a little difficult to talk about.
Watching 01 during the pandemic was a super special time in my life.
Just amazing that this show was trying its best in such a difficult time.
Okay, so, the pandemic. It is time to talk about it. A virus originating in China spread across the entire world. I can't introduce it. It affected many people, and its toll is simply unbelievable. This virus objectively killed millions of people, and no matter what, the lives lost during this pandemic were individually important. Even now, when we're supposed to come back to our daily, normal life, it's something we simply can't forget. Like the technology that surpasses our expectations year after year. This is another aspect of modern history. I can't ignore it, and neither can the production of Kamen Rider. So, how did they handle it? Of course, the productions for both Kamen Rider 01 and Machine Sentai Kiramager were halted, and even when production on the main series resumed, they were refitted to comply with health and safety regulations. So there's way more in-suit interactions, forced perspectives for actors outside of suits, and actors doing their own makeup from then on. You can tell that Izu looks a bit different from here on out, but in some cases, very particular changes to the main story. Despite what producer Takahito Mori said originally, it seems that the series going forward would downplay the role of Humagears and their occupations. It's understandable, seeing as how many guest actors would be involved, so there would be much more focus on the main cast and how they drive the plots forward.
I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the plot points that came out because of the rushed scripting and stuff from the obvious production issues with COVID, but I still appreciate that they tried their hardest with it.
There's not much to go off on when it comes to official word, but rumors circulated about if ARC would manifest itself into its own autonomous being. On the production side of things, it makes sense considering how it's a voice-only role. As such, it did happen, and sacrifices towards character development occurred, including how much screen time each actor receives outside of their writer forms. And as the story goes along, you can probably make that assumption too. That being said, it is incredibly interesting how the show came along despite these major setbacks. Saber would have even more drastic changes from the very start, due to production starting right within health and safety procedures, but that's a story for another day.
Being in the thick of it during lockdown, stressing about Ren and other things, but one constant I had was being able to watch 01 week to week.
First things first, production is halted and the show must go on. What airs in 01's place?
President Specials.
Aruto awakens in the satellite Zea. He looks around and sees Izu, but something is off about her. She has long hair, and her voice is giving up. It seems as though her memory banks have been wiped. Any excuse to have a recap episode, right? 2 of them to be exact, which retell the MetsubouJinrai.net arc in order to get Izu up and running again. While recaps have technically occurred in Kamen Rider before, they were extremely rare. Like there's a couple of Kuga episodes that are essentially clip shows, but not much more after that. I guess episode 41 of Build counts too? But that was more of a breather than anything. It seems like they'd show up way more often in Super Sentai, which is interesting because of how episodic most seasons are, but here it's used for practical reasons. There's an ongoing pandemic that nobody was prepared for, and this is what we have to work with. Plus, there's something else that makes these specials, well, special. That long-haired Izu? She turns out to be Azu, who is gathering information on 01. She actually has her roots in the very opening of the show, where Izu was shown in one scene to have long hair, an impromptu addition to the director of the first few episodes, Teruaki Sugihara. He's not the main series director, but he wanted to add this aspect for the show to work on if it comes to that point. And now, we see her purpose is to create a writer form for the arc. This is a pretty early look at Arc 0 in the show. It would take a few episodes after this for this form to make its proper debut. But maybe since magazine scans already showed off Arc 0 a whole month before this aired, and episode production had to be delayed, it makes sense to try to line it up as best they can. The Dark Rider infests Aruto while he's inside Zea. Suddenly, he comes back, and the clip show continues until the real Izu returns, and they return back to promise smiles across humanity. Good for them. Next up is a Fuwa-focused clip show, and another about the workplace battles to comedically give Fuwa some other career options. But none of them have freaking Arc 0 appear, so we don't really have to talk more about them. Then there's a sort of in-between episode before the show comes back properly. Azu appears in the Metsubou Jinrai hideout, and she tells Horobi that she's the Arc's personal assistant. She's here to test the writers of their loyalties to Arc, armed with the yet unknown progress key with the power of Arc's influence. Right off the bat, even though most of this is new footage, with some footage from past episodes, you can see that the team's inching towards a full production. There are no more than 2 characters in the same room, and they're usually distanced from each other so as to maintain conditions. It's further evident from first-person shots from Azu's perspective. Notice how each character isn't talking directly at each other too, only in each other's general direction. All these techniques will be shown at a fuller extent in episodes going forward. I can believe the team has taken extreme precaution in trying to tell a story, to build excitement in the plot going forward here, despite all odds. It's daunting, yet admirable. Though Azu sees Horobi as a valuable asset to the will of the arc, she scrutinizes him for his protection of Jin. She continues this with Ikuzuchi's ties to his brother. Naki's need to fight for all Humagear's dreams, and Jin's empathy towards Humagears and looking up to his father figure Horobi. These are all of their singularity points, which are needed to revive Arc fully and become his own autonomous form. These are all instructions to build the awareness of an all-encompassing AI, one who predicts events, causes malice, and sees through the downfall of humanity.
Possession.
Arc has materialized in the MetsubouJinrai.net hideout and immediately hijacks Horobi's body. It overpowers Jin and Yaiba, who's there to investigate. With a new driver on its person, it transforms into Arc Zero. The form is a physical embodiment of the Arc station on a 01 base design, complete with one of its eyes being a model of the satellite itself. It's messy, it's much more asymmetrical than any rider before it, and yet, it totally works. With the pipes coming out of its shoulders also evoking Tetsuo the Iron Man, you have to wonder if it's intentional, given how Arc Zero manifests by taking over other Humagears. Jin saves Yaiba before the Arc is able to destroy her, still abiding by his sense of justice. Yaiba reveals to Aruto, Fuwa, and Izu that she agreed to help Jin, as he said that separating Naki would draw the Arc and make Horobi a temporary vessel for it, in order for him to destroy it. Wouldn't Jin totally expect the Arc to be pretty powerful by this point? Like, we saw most of the progress key data get enveloped by the Arc when Ikazuchi summoned their forms. And that previous episode is still canon, so we know that they have their singularity data and battle history. What the heck did Jin think he was gonna do? So Aruto and Fuwa face off against Arc Zero, thinking it's still inhabiting Horobi's body, only to find out it was on Jin, for some reason. I don't know, maybe the Arc is just showing off. Moving on. The Arc overpowers the two riders and tries to shoot Izu. Jin gets Izu out of the way, and he stands to let the three run off. To make matters worse, Gayamatsu is gearing to mass release the Raid Riser as a self-competing product against her own defective Zaya Spec. Fukuzoe and Yamashita finally break off to join Aruto.
そこに存在していらっしゃいましたか。あと確か山下。
Huh, neither did I. I didn't even mention Yamashita before. Did I? Huh. Naki and Ikazuchi steal the Dodo key from Heathen, and Naki becomes a rider assigned by the Arc. It's a repaint of 001, which itself used Night Rogue's suit, and maybe it's a little generic compared to the other riders, but it's okay. The first thing they do is cut up Gayamatsu's clothes, which isn't quite Dan Kuroto, but okay. Gayamatsu, in a bout of egotism and confidence, retaliates by showing up to Daybreak Town to try to destroy Arc Zero, but he's pretty much beaten down by all of the MetsubouJinrai.net, with Arc in Jin's body. Aruto is having a crisis of faith due to the sheer power of the Arc at this point, but he regains confidence when Fukuzoe reminds him, hey, you and your family have been building this up for a while now. Why stop? So, Aruto gets back up, fights with Arc Zero, and gets absolutely pummeled. Mysteriously, the Arc doesn't strike down at Aruto, despite having the chance to do so. The seemingly crippled Gayamatsu comes back to Heathen to find that Fukuzoe and Yamashita have gathered a case to have him removed by the board of directors, conveniently on one tiny USB drive. Gayamatsu takes it and immediately deletes all data on the drive. He then tries to instruct Zeya to send out mass-produced Raid Risers, only to be blocked by Aruto. Izu records Gayamatsu attempting to assault Fukuzoe and Yamashita, which is used as a crux of his downfall. Now that Gayamatsu is at a vulnerable point, Aruto and Izu consult him with AI-chan, an AI developed by the two to initially give therapy to Fuwa and Yaiba. She's also voiced by Mao, who is always awesome to hear. In case you didn't know, Mao plays Gokai Yellow. There, you just recognize like 10,000 anime voices by that. Here, we finally get the backstory into the Amatsu family as a whole. His father was a cold, strict figure in his life, who was disappointed that his son would get 100% grades on his test scores. He instilled the idea that his son should only strive for 1000%, and anything less would disappoint him. The only respite Guy received as a child was a robot dog that he named Thouser, which was one of Hidden Intelligence's early products. After Guy receives a 99% test score, his father takes away Thouser, setting Guy on a path of cold self-reliance. Hearing this, Satellite Zeya develops a new model for Thouser, whose memory banks were still in the hidden archives. The two reunite, and finally, Gayamatsu sheds his need to strive for 1000%. If this dog seems familiar, it's actually Sony's Aibo, a robot made for consumers in 1999. This is an official collaboration with Toei, with the model shown in flashbacks being the ERS 111 model, and the present-day Thouser being the latest ERS 1000. Despite its toy licensee being Takara Tomy, they actually encourage people on Twitter to pair the gachapon figure of the ERS 1000 with quote-unquote other action figures, which is just adorable. Look at that. After realizing, Guy fights Arc Zero together with him, but not before Thouser does this incredible dance along with Aruto's henshin into Metal Cluster Hopper. Which, if you had an insane amount of money to spare, you could recreate at home with your own Aibo. The production staff themselves noted how endearing it was to have an actual AI actor in the show, especially one so important to the history of consumer-grade robotics as the Aibo. As such, Thouser's official credit is to the Aibo itself. Good dog. Despite the change of heart in Guy, Aruto realizes that it's going to take a lot for him to pay for his crimes, not just to Fuwa or Yaiba, as their main stipulation is the independence of Ames. But there's still his threat against the whole of humanity from feeding information of the malice and bloodshed that people cause to the satellite Ark. Aw, but look how much he loves Thouser. It's because of this alliance, however, that they were able to rescue Jin from the Ark's possession. Once awake, Jin warns Aruto that the Ark is targeting Satellite Zeya now, as a troll in providing Guy with Thouser, and therefore sparking their alliance, is proof that it defies the Ark's foresight. But before that, Ikazuchi appears at Hidden Manufacturing to say that he shed the Ikazuchi identity, and that he wants to go back to protecting Zeya. How was he able to escape? This is inherently a planned event by the Ark to predict that Ikazuchi would lead Aruto back to Daybreak Town, giving him the chance to take the 01 driver and have access to Zeya itself. The Ark destroys the core data of Zeya, inflicting the satellite to create a new Ark, believing that there are no more predictions that go against its favor. The Ark has breached Hidden Manufacturing and destroys the building single-handedly. It believes that it has reached the conclusion, piercing Aruto through the chest. Fuwa, Yaiba, and Gayamatsu have been defeated. Izu breaks down, crying for the loss of Aruto. She finds herself back in Hidden Manufacturing, just before the Ark has arrived. She stays with Aruto until she sees the Ark pierce through him, crying just as she did before. She finds herself back in Hidden Manufacturing, just before the Ark has arrived. Izu wants to help Aruto truly take off toward his dreams. It's revealed that Izu is linked to Zeya, just as her doppelganger was linked to the Ark. She has run millions of simulations to predict what can happen next, the upper hand against the predictions of the Ark. Through this, and her genuine care and need to fulfill Aruto's dreams of AI being a good for the world, she unlocks her singularity point. The scene of Izu crying has been in the show since the beginning, in the opening itself. Maybe the very instance of Izu being much more than a simple assistant was there from the start. She was always going to achieve singularity. She creates the 02 Progrise key with the design documents that Aruto has written, which had the singularity of Humagears in mind. And together with Aruto, in the few seconds they have in Satellite Zeya, they create the 02 driver. The pure embodiment of humanity, AI, and Aruto's dream has created a new Kamen Rider, one that the Ark cannot predict. That being 01's final form. Or is it a new rider altogether? Are people still upset about this? Does it matter? Anyway, here's 02.
Kamen Rider 02. It's never over.
The design is using the framework of 01, building upon it with influence from the differences between Kamen Rider Nigo and Ichigo. Western fans' reception to the design has been a little mixed, though most have called back to other final forms that weren't as flashy or different, such as Phi's blaster or liner form. It's worth noting that final forms for a while have become more and more extreme in design elements. There's no getting around the fact that Grand Geo is kind of the peak of pure excessiveness in final forms. With Grand Geo in mind, it's understandable as to why people would be a little apprehensive to this little less than extravagant design. But the context and the elements that are on here absolutely work. The red flare upon 02's collar calls back not only to Ichigo and Nigo, but to Ichigata as well, further linking the pure evolution in the 01 writers so far. And it spells out 02, which is fun. Overall, it's a swish, vibrant, yet uncomplicated design that adheres to the show's design philosophies. As evident in the slot for the 02 attachment in the 01 driver, it seems like this was planned from the start, which is incredibly interesting considering how most other riders, especially those with kit bash suits, were made during production. Also, it has one of the best jingles in the franchise. It's triumphant. Maybe calling it a final form is dishonest to the very nature of it in the show. It's not just a Saishu power-up, but it's also the technological leap into a future where dreams can come true, and the actions of humanity aren't built from their malice, but their very souls, their creations, and their need to keep going forward. Plus, the fight between 02 and Arc Zero is truly among the best in the show, calling back to the predictions that Shining Hopper made, and the pacing in the fight between 001 and Ichigata. He's one step beyond the instructions of malice installed into the arc, fighting for the dreams of both humans and Humagears. To prosper, Aruto unleashes his rider kick, appropriately named the 02 Big Bang, which liberates Ikazuchi. Even after this, Horobi appears to take Ikazuchi, declaring that as long as the satellite is still active, Arc isn't truly defeated.
Final instructions.
The Arc retaliates by hacking into Zea's infrastructure to indiscriminately attack everything it has access to. It's using everything in its power to respond to the event of 02, and that means leaving MetsuboJinrai.net behind, seeing no more use of them. Despite what has been shown before, this, above all else, is a worst-case scenario of AI theorists. Humanity's fate is extinction. MetsuboJinrai.net is in a crisis of faith. Just like G-Pen and other Humagears before them, Horobi is lost in trying to find his instructions. Jin tries to convince him to break from Arc, knowing that all it has been doing is using Humagears for its own will, which leads them to fight. The singularity data in Horobi prevents him from truly destroying Jin, however. Aruto has been reinstated as a president of Hidden Intelligence. He proposes that, now more than ever, humans and Humagears must unite in order to defeat the malevolent AI of the Arc, promising a world of equality between the two. Humagears that were helped by Aruto before are shown here to take matters into their own hands, helping people who are affected by the calamity. Even Ikazuchi, no, Raiden, has reunited with his brother, Subaru. Just before Jin has reached out to the will and instincts of Horobi, the Arc has possessed him yet again. And once again, the will of Horobi has fought against the Arc's instructions. The Arc escapes from Horobi's body to possess Jin. Realizing the core of MetsuboJinrai.net's purpose is against the will of the Arc, Horobi allies with Aruto in order to save his son. It's never over. Just as the Arc retreats to the orbiting satellite, Subaru and Raiden are there to destroy it. Yet another conclusion that the Arc could not predict. Despite saving Jin, Horobi still resolves that his dream is humanity's extinction. As long as the malice of humanity exists, the Arc will too. Horobi changes into a new rider, with a progress key that Azu had before, and he attacks Aruto and Izu. Izu realizes that this is a simulation, and she finds Azu behind her, and she says it's a simulation created by the Arc. She reiterates the notion that as long as malice exists, so will the Arc, describing it as the effects of God in the will of people. Izu awakens, unsure of the possibilities that will arise from the simulation she saw. Horobi has sent a message to all Humagear, asking them to unite under the will of MetsuboJinrai.net. Suddenly, Williamson Yotagaki, the research and development chief of Zaya International, has appeared to usurp Gayamatsu's place as CEO of Zaya Japan. He keeps him around to act as Conrad Thouser, though. It's revealed that Yotagaki was a benefactor that revived Jin. This time, he instructs Jin to destroy Horobi, deciding that he is the last remnant of the arc. Before he can set off to decide on his own terms, Jin is approached by Azu with a mysterious white progress key she used before. She decides that Horobi is a good host for this progress key. Izu tries to mediate a fight between Fuwa, Yaiba, and Horobi and his small army of Magia. Aruto arrives to fight them off too, liberating individual human gear with every attack. Izu, yet again, tries to break through to Horobi, but it doesn't work. Horobi inherently believes that Izu has been corrupted by humans, setting upon his resolve of personal justice. Izu tells Aruto that she believes human gear will, one day, laugh from the heart, and in an extent, Horobi will too. Aruto is desolate. He stays where Izu died throughout the night, only to find another Izu called to him. The next day, Horobi has enacted an attack upon the city with more Magia. The emotional tension between Fuwa, Yaiba, and Jin are at an all-time high, with Jin scared that the arc will awaken in Horobi if they keep it up, but he is mistaken. Kamen Rider Arc 1 appears. It's a new form of the Arc Rider, but this time, it's a corruption of 01's base design. Instead of Aruto's previous attacks breaking human gear from their Magia corruption, Arc 1 seems to make every Magia he attacks disappear. It's actually pretty creepy. His finisher here isn't a move at all, but really an implosion among his immediate surroundings. The rider releases his form, and it turns out to be a broken and emotionless Aruto. Azu has unlocked the malice in Aruto's emotions, his need for revenge, and his potential to become everything he didn't want to be. This was the final conclusion that the arc was preying upon. Aruto marches to fight Horobi himself, destroying and erasing the data and forms of riders that try to fight him. Before he destroys the 1000 driver, Guy is able to gather the data of Arc 1's fighting style, and finds it to be an exact match of 01's. It's even more dangerous than before, as it is acting out the maliciousness of a human's conscience, and it could therefore come out to be a full-fledged war between humans and Humagear, one that was depicted in the Reiwa movie. Horobi gathers even more Magia, this time describing Aruto as the ultimate evil, being the embodiment of the arc. Aruto arrives and the two fight, despite Horobi being outclassed in every way. Right when Aruto is about to finish off Horobi, Jin steps in to take the hit. Jin, with his functions depleting, tells Horobi that he was able to feel his heart and his familial feelings for Horobi. Aruto's own emotions are rising higher and higher, feeling empathy for Horobi, and so he runs away. But Azu appears, taking advantage of the malice deepening in Horobi, gives him the abilities to become his final form. Horobi has made a public message declaring Aruto to be one with the arc. Just like a political press conference, Humagear start yelling questions at him. Horobi declares a war against humans, with Aruto at the forefront of it all. Humagear start protesting Hidden Intelligence. All eyes are on Hidden and what the company will do next. There are Humagear rallies on the streets. We've seen this imagery before in Black Sun, and honestly, it's a little surprising that such a political allegory has only come up this late in the season. But before the Ames officer shoots the Humagear, Yaiba appears, with her newfound authority as the captain of Ames to stop it. Fukuzoe performs a dogeza to apologize for Hiden's part in the controversy, and Shesta joins him, seemingly unlocking Singularity 2. Aruto is at an impasse. In order to stop him from doing anything drastic, Fuwa and Naki appear to stop Aruto. As Fuwa can't become a rider with his own gear anymore, Naki gives him their Japanese wolf progress key, and he becomes
Japanese wolf! Good morning! Hey!
Assault Wolf but with silver highlights. Fun workaround, but I don't think it's anything that special. This time, Aruto becomes 02. Still with the thoughts and influence of Azu in his mind, Aruto keeps evading Fuwa, coming to the point that his own shot riser comes apart. Walking slowly to Horobi, Aruto uplinks to the remnant of Zeya, where he finds his father. Aruto finally arrives to fight Horobi. He becomes Arc 1, but Horobi, with a Zetsume driver and Arc Scorpion progress key made by Azu, becomes his final form.
Henshin.
With the number of arc design writers in this arc, 2 different arcs, it's honestly a little exhausting talking about them all. However, Arc Scorpion is a fine form. It's a reuse of Ichigata's suit, which is really interesting since they're both, dads. But this isn't brought up in the show anyway. The color accents and helmet are good. The 2 riders fight on, with the fate of humanity and Huma gears resting upon them. In Horobi's transformation, many copies of the 01 arsenal appear submerged in rocks for the 2 to fight with. I have no idea why, but it's cool. In analyzing the fight, Fuwa, Guy, and Yaiba try to enact some irregularities in order to change the fate of the future. They try to restore Jin, who appears in Azu's consciousness, to tell her just what Aruto's doing, something totally unpredictable. Aruto takes the attacks from Horobi, which switches him off from Arc 1, angering Horobi. It's then revealed that Soryo appeared to Aruto to alleviate the rage that came about from Izu's death. The death of Izu struck deep into Aruto's psyche, which made him relive the death of his father. But it's the power of a Kamen Rider, and the growth of becoming an adult, that Aruto wanted to realize the happiness and laughter in all conscious beings. And it's here that Aruto knows that Horobi truly has a consciousness to love, as he's acting out of revenge for Jin, just as he's acting out of revenge for Izu. Horobi has acted like this all along because of his apprehension of his own feelings. Aruto resolves to the core of his humanity to bring about a new age where no one has to act for strength, for revenge, for sorrow against the perceived evils in this world. But Aruto knows that his strength of his own being, that he can rise to take off towards a dream. There's only one person who can defeat him. Soryo bestows Aruto with a new 01 driver, which he uses to become
The sky turns to take off toward a dream.
Rising Hopper? Huh? Nope, realizing Hopper. So, 02 has been used sparingly in the last arc of 01, especially in comparison to past final forms. It didn't debut until episode 40, and now, it's not even in the final battle? Well, think of it this way. We've seen this before plenty of times. The quote-unquote personal form has been a long-time tradition in tokusatsu. This isn't just any final battle, but it's the conclusion to a whole storyline. Yes, I know power scaling is fun to fans across any medium, but it matters not to how cool any ultimate form can be. It matters in how it works out in the story. And we'll see this exact method pop up again in future Reiwa seasons. Is it a cop-out? No, not at all. I mean, we've seen the peak of how important a quote-unquote ultimate form could be in Kuga. Used only once told us how immeasurably powerful it is. And we don't see the pure essence of that ultimate form again. Any future showing of Ultimate Kuga totally denigrates its original appearance. I don't know. I think realizing Hopper is just really cool. And once again, one of the best henshin jingles we've had thus far. Plus, the ensuing fight shows off the very essence of what 01 has done with its choreography, abilities, wireworks, camera angles, poses, and overall special effects. It's all spectacular, and the callback to the very first fight in the show is an incredible touch. Though the realizing impact destroys the Zetsume driver, it doesn't destroy Horobi, who resigned to his fate before realizing he was still alive. Aruto and Horobi are battered. and they each understand they don't have to fight anymore. They've prevented a war. They understand their emotions. They understand their losses, their struggle, and yet they understand the need to prosper. The next morning, Hiden announces plans to re-establish the satellite to expand Humagears, with the reassurance that AI will aid humanity from now on. Yaiba has taken control of AIMS to act as, a private army again? Naki has joined them as a technical advisor. Fuwa is acting as a freelance peacekeeping agent. Gayamatsu has hired many Aibos along with Thouser in his department. They should have been back in Outsiders. Horobi is finally wearing non-tattered clothing, and Jin has been reborn. The two dedicate themselves to making sure that the Ark can't return. There's one loose end, however, as Azu comes to a mysterious man who becomes a new, mysterious rider known as Eden. The countdown will begin. At Hiden Intelligence, Aruto has replicated Izu, and although she is a Humagear with a blank slate, he promises to teach her everything that Izu once was, starting with how he says his jokes. Together, they take off towards a dream.
39回だけにサンキューです。
次。
Review.
There have been better seasons of Kamen Rider in the Reiwa era, but none of them have confronted a yet-present technological advancement and its political implication, nor had they been right in the face of the whole world being under a global pandemic. Could things have worked out better for the show? Does 01 not age well as other seasons because of the very topic it chose to center itself on? Should they have written more for Yaiba? Should they have made a better final form? Should certain arcs have been shortened? Should other characters have had better focus? Was Aruto the best person to focus on as our main character? As the first of the Reiwa era, Kamen Rider 01 has a lot of pressure on it, laying the groundwork and being a historic event for fans. So, I want to get this elephant out of the way immediately. I've seen so many comments on Twitter, Reddit, 4chan, Facebook, you name it, about one certain thing. Whenever 01 is brought up, there's always that one person that says, the second half isn't good because of COVID. If only COVID didn't happen, 01 would have been better. It's all because of COVID. I'm here to say that, yes, as a whole, plans changed. I still think the last third of 01 is actually pretty good. Would it have been better? Maybe? Big question mark? But see, here's the thing. One area where COVID is blamed for is around the job competition arc. Although, there were signs of the show being messy long before then. When it hit during the Arc 1 and finale arcs, I think the show's quality was at the very least okay, but still manages to be great at its best times. There are quite a lot of things COVID can be blamed on, yes. Outside of that, the show has very glaring issues that I can't exactly turn away from. MC, check it out. The treatment of certain characters, of which these aren't me being a quote-unquote Westerner watching a Japanese show or soapboxing for personal reasons, they're legitimate critiques that stand out for the first series of the Reiwa era. Yes, 01 is trying its best with what it has, but a lot of these writing decisions can't solely be blamed by the pandemic. There are some choices that leave a very bad taste in my mouth, some things that make me feel icky just thinking about it, and of which, once again, isn't due to the pandemic. Character development did have to rush towards the end, but here's the other thing. There were 30 other episodes before that. It's so unfortunate when I keep saying over and over that the first arc was fantastic. It was a near masterpiece. The stories it told, whether you see through AI or not, were so good. The characters put into these situations made for great drama with everyone, even the minor cast. Man, the episodes about the manga artist and the father dealing with the loss of his daughter were amazing, made even better with the theming of AI. You didn't have to agree or disagree with the morality of technology, but the storytelling was there to make great characters and stories. Funnily enough, before we entered the job competition arc, I felt like the show was already losing steam. The somewhat episodic nature probably could have lasted the entire series, though it also seemed like the ideas were running thin at the same time. those episodes I mentioned could probably only be told this early. If they were kept mostly as is, but saved for a later arc, I don't think they would hit quite the same. So, introducing Zaya and Thouser as a rival company is a really good natural next step. But really, a job competition? Okay, whatever, guess we're in a tech measuring contest now. I'll be the first to tell you that the arc isn't like the worst thing ever. It's just boring. It's the same thing for a few episodes, which you could say about the first arc, but the difference is that I wasn't bored there. Like, a fire arrangement competition, a house selling competition, you could have like fiery explosions and Subway Surfers playing on the side of the screen. I still would have been extremely bored. I wish I could tell you to just skip the whole arc, but unfortunately, it's mixed with an actual serialized story, which just adds to the messy tone. Wait, did I even bring up Metal Cluster Hopper? Was that a thing that happened? My bad, my eyes are closed by the time that happened in the middle of the arc. The Heathen manufacturing arc following that got better. It did kind of remind me of the first arc in terms of tone, but the inclusion of ARC, that's ARK, not ARC, makes it a lot better narratively. Yeah, it's still a bit of a mess, but at least it's a focused mess with ARC. I can point towards great moments here, specifically with Fuwa and Mesebo Jinrai, along with the character developments for Izu and Aruto. The final arc covering episodes 42 through 45 is good? Question mark? I think that's what I said like a paragraph ago. See, at least the last couple of arcs got a couple of paragraphs. The best I'm giving you here is 2 sentences, including this one. However, despite everything, I loved the final conflict between Aruto and Horobi. The layers of several characters have a great flow as their arcs twist and turn. Aruto starting as this failed comedian, then becoming a CEO without knowing anything, but still wanting to be a hero to Humagear? Well, you can see the easy, if quick, natural progression of it. While a big leap from comedian to CEO, I think his character growth was really good, especially when he grew malicious after Izu's death. I think seeing Aruto as this annoying lead writer, quote-unquote, who only tells bad jokes, is a huge disservice to this growth. And honestly, it makes me think anyone who says that hasn't actually watched the show to the end. Mostly considering Aruto does chill out after the first arc, he is a great lead who embodies a heroic spirit. The rest of the characters, I already talked about them throughout this whole video. See, this is what happens when you have someone who can actually organize my thoughts better than I can. Thank you, Liz. But in case you missed my subtle and not so subtle thoughts, I like Fuwa overall. His retcon backstory was interesting and executed well enough. I wish I could love Yua, but she's constantly thrown to the side. Horobi is cool when not tied to a chair. Arc Zero is whatever. I don't think I even like his design. Did I read a part where Liz says the Arc suit is cool? I guess I could say that's her thoughts. I don't actually like the Arc Zero suit. Or the regular Arc suit. Okay, so, all of that out of the way. What does Marcosatsu think of Kamen Rider 01? It's good. Yes, it has some very glaring issues that I can't ignore. I could probably never ignore. But the rest of the show is good. Alright, let's talk about those toys, huh?
Brand new toys.
Each faction in the first quarter of the show was given their own belt, as a new direction for the Reiwa era, since in Heisei Phase 2, only one transformation belt would be sold until Christmas time. First, we'll go with Mesebo Jinrai's device, the Force Riser. Since the show is so technological, you might be wondering where a hacking element can come in. That's the Force Riser. It might not be the traditional electronic type of hacking, but this is what the quote-unquote hacking was supposed to be, according to an interview in Figure King 276. Combining this idea with construction equipment led to the design you see here. And I really love it. Next, we have the aimed shot riser, which is one of my favorite devices. It's a gun. For a Kamen Rider. Now it just needs to be for a cowboy and it'd be my number one. Anyway, the keys for this driver aren't authorized by the gun in the same way as a 01 driver. Instead, a person has to grant authorization. Since this was the main idea for the shot riser, the story got changed a bit, as well as making Fuwa a more hot-headed person. Other variants like the slash riser are cool too. Funny to say that the Slash Riser was at one point planned to be a Fuwa power-up. Before we get to the 01 driver, I should bring up the 1000 driver. It's very much supposed to be a rival heat in itself, all the way down to the suit, since the 1000 suit uses molds of 01. The 1000 driver is meant to look like a safe combined with Aruto's driver. Personally, it's another one of my favorites, even if one key is hollow plastic, and that bothers me way more than it should. Oh, and yes, the similarities between this Thouser and the Fist of the North Star's Thouser are completely on purpose. And finally, the 01 driver itself. What a gorgeous piece of work. Truly one of my favorite drivers of all time. It's so simple, so clean, so technological. It's perfect as a first Reiwa era driver. While no motif was in mind when designing it, the circle in the middle was kept as a homage to Kamen Rider Ichigo's Typhoon Belt. It's a really neat driver with tons of little details in and out, while keeping things visually simple. Though one thing I love about the driver are the Progrise keys. Based on biometrics, the keys originally were planned to transform its user into a robot, but that idea got incorporated into its animals that look more mechanical. Wouldn't it have been really funny if this idea was kept for current Fuwa and he got turned into what he hated? Anyway, you might be wondering why these are called keys when they don't look like traditional ones. Maybe these are keys in a sense that they authorize and open the driver, right? They're actually meant to be card keys and digital keys. Since that's the idea, then I love these even more. Yeah, they're literally just rectangles, but open it up and you see how neat all these ideas come together. It's a card key at first with pretty colors. Open it up, and now it's like a traditional key. These are probably one of my favorite gimmicks ever, alongside Gio's ride watches. I do love the Progrise keys visually, but sound-wise, I know I'm probably gonna get hated a lot here. Not as much. Like, they're still good, and of course very memorable for the most part. Jump. Authorize. Jump up and rise. Rising hopper. Bro, I could say that all day, but I could not tell you how some random keys like Freezing Bear goes. Freezing Bear. Is that how it goes? Dude, I don't even remember its activation phrase. Freeze. I think? Flying Falcon. The only reason I even remember Breaking Mammoth's activation is because press is such a strange phrase to go with this. Press! Of course, there are way more forms that weren't even in the show. And I don't mean hypothetical forms like 01 Shooting Wolf. I mean full-on unused keys like Gatling Hedgehog and Sparkling Giraffe that was used as a Toys R Us promo. Or one of my favorites, Horseshoe Crab. Hard! God. I'm an adult, right? But yeah, all the other main forms are just earworms. Shining Hopper! When I shine, darkness fades. Everybody jump! It's never over. And bro, who could ever forget when the five horns cross, the golden soldier Thouser is born? Presented by Zaya. Hey wait, those tags at the end. You thought I was forgetting them, right? No way, man. They're absolutely the best parts of the jingles. The English AI voice was included to give a better feeling of the technological theme, which, no duh, you probably didn't need me to tell you that, but here's an official source to make us feel smarter. And yeah, the AI voice is really good, if not super silly, but it's at the same time something I completely expect out of Kamen Rider at this point. A jump to the sky turns to a rider kick. Fangs that can bite through concrete. The elevation increases as the bullet is fired. Let's rise, let's rise, let's give you power. Or my personal favorite, which honestly I would make this my tag for like everything if I could. A rider kick to the sky turns to take off toward a dream. Makes no sense, but I love it. It is a masterpiece. I will keep those lines in my heart forever. While the ending lines are voiced by AI, the actual jingles and other sounds are voiced by Maynard and Blaze Plant of Monkey Magic. Who's Monkey Magic? I'm so glad you didn't ask, which means we gotta go over the rest of the music first. Is what I would say, but I'm procrastinating. Okay, so everyone knows Kamen Rider is just a toy commercial, but the Reiwa era really shows that quite literally anything can be marketable. There are these Humagear modules that they wear over their ears. I guess it makes enough sense to sell these, mostly for the roleplay aspect. I've worn these before, and while they look nice, they really hurt my ears since it's all hard plastic. The sounds are pretty neat though, and it came with temporary tattoos to give you the HumaGear code on your hand. Of course, if we have the module, then we also have the Zaya spec, which was premium Bandai exclusive and cost literally hundreds of dollars. I guess that's Bandai being Bandai. But here's the kicker. It was hollow plastic, and there were reports of it being incredibly easy to break. Yikes. Normally I don't bring up figures since I don't really have anything to add, but I do enjoy myself a Rider figure or two of a season. What I really liked here though is that Izu got an SH figure art. It's rare for Kamen Rider to get actor likenesses for a figure. You can count on one hand how many of these there were previously, but yeah, we got both Izu and Azu. Funnily enough, she was the only actor figure we got, which I would have expected at least Aruto to get one too, but hey, I'm happy to see more of these at all. Speaking of figures, a newish line popped up for Rider around 2018 called Figure Eye Standard. They were model kits based on riders throughout the Heisei era. I bring them up because it was a great line of toys, but also because 01, ironically, was the last one to get a Figure Eyes in 2025. Funny how that works. I recommend getting one or two of just your favorites, cause I built a couple and yeah, they were pretty basic. Just like the 4P01 model kit that exists for some reason. Going back to Progress keys for a bit, I'm sure you know that every modern Rider line of toys also includes Legend Rider gimmicks. This trend went as far back as Kamen Rider Double, so continuing that are the Legend Rider keys. Just like before, the music is taken from previous keys, but with new lyrics to accompany the rider. These are alright, mostly because as I stated earlier, unless they're major keys, I just don't remember the jingles themselves. The names are pretty silly though. Thumbs Upping Kuga, Level Upping Xaid, Wake Upping Kiva. Where's the BLing Tomkatsu key? Also didn't go over this in the show, but HumaGear used Progress keys for basically everything data related, so of course those were sold as well. I'd probably just get the Izu one since some of the HumaGear job keys don't open and only have a couple of lines. They do look pretty though. Oh, actually that goes for the keys in general. The DX and premium keys open, but lower quality ones don't. And if you weren't sick of keys yet, there are the Zetsume Rise keys, music keys that play songs from the show, Memorial Edition keys, toy-exclusive keys that don't appear in any of the show's media, even the blank gray keys were sold at one point. Yeah, those were certainly a lot of keys, but nothing will ever beat what's possibly the funniest thing Bandai has ever sold. Just take a quick second to guess what the most random toy could be. Unless you're already in the know, then, well, this surprised even me. Remember Taro, the comedian HumaGear from episode 1? His main gimmick is to have his abs burst during his stand-up routine. You can buy a singular ab.
Music.
Hey, so normally I talk about a whole lot of music here, but Avex is more strict on music than Toei with their shows, so yeah. I don't think I can do music portions here anymore. 01's music is very good. Alright, cool. Moving on.
Memory of Heroes.
In the not-so-windy city of Sector City, we meet a half-boiled detective on a case to find a villain voiced by Dio Brando. Together with the help of Kamen Rider O's and Kamen Rider 01, the two detectives in one will liberate the city and find out the mystery of how certain villains returned. Released in October 2020 for the PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch, Kamen Rider Memory of Heroes has you play mainly as the three riders I mentioned. This is an action-adventure game with a big focus on story. And by that I mean, there are so many cutscenes. Like, look, you take a few steps and there's another cutscene. These aren't short cutscenes either. There's so much talking. Like, this makes Hideo Kojima look like an amateur in comparison. See, this cutscene is still going and I had it up on the corner since the last couple of paragraphs. And it's not even just a major thing either. This is the tutorial. You can probably already tell that's my biggest criticism of this game. When I said there's a big emphasis on story, I mean that way too literally. But the story is really good. I'm not going to have major spoilers here, though I want to at least mention that even though 01 is a title character, he's not here much. You don't even get to use him as a permanent character until 2/3 into the game. This is more of a Kamen Rider Double story that just so happens to have O's and 01. Well, O's at least has more focus than 01, but Double is clearly the biggest part. Which brings me to how much love is put into crafting this game. Despite the low focus, 01 plays exactly how you expect, and has all his main forms, including 02. The battle animations are so good, the voice lines are in character, and the gameplay loop is super fun. But aside from the 01 characters, everyone else aren't voiced by the original actors, which is a shame, but completely understandable. They at least sound good, and Double's voice actors went on to voice themselves in the anime. Each character, like I said, has a lot of love and care put into the gameplay, and an extension to Double's story. That's all surface level stuff, but what about the game as, well, a video game? Guys, this is the Kamen Rider adventure game I've always wanted. The gameplay loop is fun, solving puzzles, fighting mooks, all those forms. Just look at this on screen, like, don't tell me that doesn't make you want to play. Musou games to me get way too repetitive for my taste, which is a big reason why I don't like Bat Ride Wars. Trust me, I've tried. But Memory of Heroes just feels really good to play. There's also enough breakups between action that I don't get tired of it. This has to be my favorite Kamen Rider game ever. But compared to any other non-Toku game, I mean, it's alright. It's no Zelda or anything. It's fine. But if you're a fan of Kamen Rider 00s or 01, then you really should check this one out. There are tons of spoilers for 00s though, so I recommend watching those before playing this. And good luck with the shipping prices.
Final stage.
Months after the finale, Azu contemplates a new plan for Arc. She starts by revealing herself to Aruto and transforming into Kamen Rider Arc 01.
Arc 01. Final conclusion. Arc Rising Hawkbird.
A jump to the sky to gain hatred.
This is Kamen Rider 01 Final Stage. Just gonna pull the band-aid off real quick. I usually say Rider stage shows aren't necessary, but still a lot of fun and worth the watch. However, 01 Final Stage is okay, I guess. Yeah, it hurts to say that this is probably the most basic stage show I've covered so far. It's fine and still has plenty of cool creative moments, but like, nothing really that notable. I'm actually more confused on why certain ideas here weren't used in the show, such as Azu becoming Arc 01, or how Ansatsu-chan becomes Arc 0. Yeah, that's kinda cute. 02 even fights Arc 01, which is the closest we get to an actual fight between these two, since it wasn't in the show proper. Disappointingly though, Aruto doesn't get its stage show exclusive form. Main writers don't always get forms for stage shows, but it's just another thing to add to this being so plain. I can't even complain that it's boring, cause it's like entertaining enough. It's just, how the kids say, sauce-less? It might actually be a huge compliment that this is the most negative I've been towards 01 so far, and it's for the stage show that you could easily skip since it's just that, as the kids also say, mid. I don't even think it's canon, or at least it's not referenced in any way in future media. And before you argue, sometimes stage show elements are brought up in side content, most notably being the Zangetsu power-up from Gaim. Anyway, yeah, 01 has a stage show. At least some of the sets are nice, and the Rider Kick text effects are recreated in a neat way. Wow, that's really the highlight for me? Words on some TV screens? Oh boy. Let's move forward to something you all actually want to hear about.
Real time.
The countdown begins as Aruto and a mysterious rider fight in the darkness. If God created this world in 6 days, then I'll destroy it in 60 minutes and create my own paradise. A man named Esu prepares to take over the world with his cult, Paraiso Guardia. There's only one person who could defeat Esu, and that's Aruto. This is Kamen Rider 01, Real Time. Esu is formidable, and Aruto is easily taken out. Aruto wakes up in a place where others are asleep, except for a woman. After some long action, Izu shows the other riders what happened that led up to this. In the morning, Aruto is given a message from Esu about taking over the world at noon, so the rest of the riders go out and fight, eventually learning that Esu is using nanomachines to help his plan. That includes making his own Kamen Rider army. Guy also learns that Esu was part of a nanomachine medical research team. Aruto learns this from the woman he's been following to a church. Meanwhile, Horobi follows Azu, who says a new extinction is coming since Arc had other plans. Esu lost his humanity and became a husk of his former self due to the nanomachines. Esu already has a few steps of his plan complete after beating Aruto, by taking part of Zea's power with a 1000-jacker. Once Aruto is told the truth, he leaves the digital world before hearing the woman say one more thing, not heard by the audience. Aruto wakes up and calls for his bike. This is Raiden's only scene. Aruto goes back for a rematch with Esu. Through some shenanigans, Guy is able to suss out information from one of Esu's cronies, who explains that Esu is using a network called ThinkNet to lure people to his side, which is where the Rider troops came from. Aruto and Esu's fight leads them to a church, where a new key is made, but it can't be stopped, so Aruto forces it upon himself. Aruto goes berserk, nearly killing Esu, until 02 arrives, used by Izu. She remembered back to the previous Izu's life, thanks to the memories that the 02 driver has archived, wanting to fight by Aruto's side. Now for the last of the exposition, the woman Aruto was following around was Esu's fiancée. She was unable to be saved once Arc went online because the nanomachines destroyed her body, so Esu digitized her consciousness into a digital world, planning to move people on Earth to the digital one in order to create a new paradise for her. At the last second, one of Esu's followers decides to do what Esu won't, and actually destroy the world himself. With that, Esu goes back to be with his fiancée, while Aruto and Izu transform together. Oh, I just realized Aruto's using Realizing Hopper and not Rising Hopper. Anyway, Lucifer is defeated, and Esu gets a last moment with his fiancée. And the day is saved. RealxTime went through several big changes before and during COVID. The bigger change was that this was supposed to take place in a single day before the finale, with Humagear taking over a post-apocalyptic Earth and Arc being the main antagonist. It does sound interesting, though we already got a glimpse of that during Reiwa the First Generation, and it might have retreaded Kabuto Godspeed Love just a tiny bit. The movie we did get is one of my favorite Kamen Rider movies ever. Despite this being an epilogue, I think it could work standalone, and even be a small introduction for newer fans, which is probably why it was chosen for a screening at San Diego Comic-Con, where I watched in person, and that was pretty neat. It even had an introduction video from Fuwa and Yua's actors. So, I think I can just give a blank statement here of, yeah, the movie is really good. And everyone who's watched 01 would say the same. Everyone knows how cool the action is, how awesome it is that Izu is a rider, how Rising Hopper breaking his own arm to continue fighting, the funny moments with Guy. I agree, they're all amazing. But what I do want to add is that Esu is a fantastic character. Sympathetic villains take a lot for me to care for, but I think Esu acts so natural that I just loved him immensely. Not to mention that Eden suit. Its motif is based on the human structure of veins, which you'll probably notice more on the driver. It explains why there's so many lines on his suit. Esu is a character that grows and learns so much in a single movie. I'd love to see more of him in the future. And Lucifer is there too. He's just someone for our writers to fight and to add to the religious motif. You know, Lucifer, Eden, Esu's speech being taken from the Bible, Abaddon being the Rider Troopers. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. The Rider Troopers are okay. I actually don't like the suits. That's about it for RealxTime. If you love 01, or even just Kamen Rider, then of course, I highly suggest watching.
Others.
Project Soldo, a plan by President Arcland to become the new Arc, along with the help of Azu. We learn that Aruto is in space for another project by Hidden Intelligence to do cool stuff. So that means Horobi and Jin are just chillin', waiting for Arc to come by and destroy it. Once outside, Jin comes across Arcland, who's a Kamen Rider, and the president.
Setsumetsu Evolution. Henshin. When the 5 weapons cross, the Jet Black Soldier. Sayang is born. I am the president.
This is Kamen Rider 01 Others, metsubojinrai.net. Arcland takes Jin away to explain why he was recreated in the middle of the show. Jin is actually a prototype of a special kind of Humagear, the Soldo Zero. Meanwhile, the rest of Metsubo Jinrai are looking for a way to rescue Jin. As a Soldo, Jin and other Soldo Humagear are newer linked, being completely devoid of free will, like a truly mindless robot. Metsubo Jinrai arrived to free Jin, but it was a trap to lure them in and be test subjects for the Soldo Humagears. The Metsubo Jinrai riders transform. During the fight, Jin connects the rest of his team into the Neurolink, but with their powers combined, Metsubo Jinrai agree on fighting together, transforming into Kamen Rider Metsubo Jinrai.
Wow! Amazing. Very good. We will destroy you all.
The Soldo Humagears are defeated, and Metsubo Jinrai return to their own bodies, feeling dread of a mass brain system controlling them. This is what Arklin wanted all along, creating a rider that can handle the mass brain system and take over the world. Aruto, Horobi, and Esu were able to control Ark in their own ways, while Arklin can turn that feeling of justice into evil incarnate, turning Metsubo Jinrai into a threat that Zaya can fight.
Bang.
Huh? Oh. Azu is shot and never returns. Alright. The next step in Arklin's plan is to blame Metsubo Jinrai on attacking Zaya Enterprises, but Yua doesn't believe Metsubo Jinrai would do such a thing. So then Arklin says Ames is working with Naki, who is part of Metsubo Jinrai, causing even more unrest. With no one else willing to help, Metsubo Jinrai take it upon themselves to defeat Arklin.
Zaya will be extinct.
Fuwa witnesses Metsubo Jinrai kill Arklin, then Metsubo Jinrai destroy the bodies of Raiden, Naki, Jin, and Horobi, then destroys the Zaya building. Amidst the destruction, Metsubo Jinrai yells out, trapped in this body. Yua gives a press meeting about Metsubo Jinrai blowing up Zaya Enterprises, and Ames will do everything to stop them. Of course, Guy is alive because he was below ground. Meanwhile, Fuwa and Yua are sent out to fight Metsubo Jinrai.
Valkyrie will be extinct.
During their battles, they both teach certain Soldo Humagears the true meaning of justice, a word that Fuwa hates. Yua fights off Metsubo Jinrai as her Soldo Humagear friend is destroyed, but gives her a new Progrise key.
Savile Tiger! Savile Tiger!
Great fun by judges that protects lives.
She's able to damage Metsubo Jinrai's driver and is knocked out. Yua is barely holding on to life, so Fuwa is next to take on Metsubo Jinrai. Fuwa gets a scene paralleling Yua, where a Soldo Humagear gives him a new key.
It's my rule!
And so, Metsubo Jinrai is defeated, and Fuwa falls over. 01 Others is the end of the story. Anything related to the show afterwards are of another place and time with loose connections. This is, for all intents and purposes, the end of Kamen Rider 01. Much like the Build V cinemas, the 01 V cinemas are seen with much disdain, as you can see here. Oh, no disdain at all? In fact, all the comments are overwhelmingly positive. Never mind, I guess? This is actually about the Metsubo Jinrai movie, and I agree, it's very good. A story focusing on this group is a great move, and I like that we learn more about Jin specifically. Sure would have been nice for it to be told in the main show, but hey, if this was planned out in a bigger extension to the movie, then that's cool too. There's not much else I can say here other than I did enjoy the Metsubo Jinrai movie. Except for Azu getting killed off unceremoniously like that, but I guess I'll talk about Yuya Takahashi more when we get to Kamen Rider Geats. It's the Vulcan and Valkyrie movie that's divisive, and for several reasons. Let me preface all of this by saying that even though I joke about having weird opinions, I actually tend to agree with the general consensus more often than not. But this is a time where I disagree, because I actually like the Vulcan and Valkyrie movie to an extremely wide extent. It's pretty easy to distinguish idea versus execution, but it can be tough to describe why these ideas were good versus why the execution was bad. Others, Metsubo Jinrai works for me because it's not entirely meant to be watched standalone, as it's just part 1 of this part 2 epilogue story. Yes, it can be watched without Vulcan Valkyrie, though it'll feel incomplete. Maybe a viewer didn't like how Metsubo Jinrai ended and decided not to continue to Vulcan Valkyrie. Would that then be considered a bad execution when not all the answers are there? Would that decision be on the story writer? Should the story writer, quote-unquote, have written a better movie? Yes. No. Maybe. As a man who spends countless hours writing and watching tokusatsu, I could so easily say there's a lot of nuance to answers like this. It's not all black and white. Some would say it is stupid to go this in-depth for a kid show, which has always been so easily rebutted with, yeah, it is a kid show, but it's a kid show that I and so many others care about. We care about these characters and where the story takes us. And that brings me to the ending of Vulcan Valkyrie. A lot of 01 characters have been killed off, including the entirety of Metsubo Jinrai. Deaths like these are not going to be taken lightly, and can make or break a movie. Then you have to consider a lot of hindsight. Metsubo Jinrai have shown that they can be reconstructed, so are their deaths permanent? Does that point matter when the context shows that they were just as easily disposable? It feels disrespectful, doesn't it? Well, what about a human character like Fuwa who can't come back like a robot can? I don't know. Let's ask Marvel and all the times it killed off human characters. One of the main topics brought up about this movie is how Fuwa's fate is left ambiguous, since the last we see is him walking away, but he fades away like Metsubo Jinrai. Ambiguous, huh? Now, that's a major cop-out, right? Why not just give us an answer? Why can't a story writer just give us a happy ending? Like I said, there's more nuance to this than a simple, Fuwa is dead, but at least everything is good again. When there's still the entirety of outsiders to worry about, plus whatever Aruto has to deal with when he gets back to Earth, it can be very jarring for the general viewer. Although, Yuya Takahashi did have an answer. Kind of. Takahashi himself said that the ending isn't meant to be bad, but it's also not good. Huh? Well, what does any of that mean? I don't know, but I like the movies.
The Legacy of 01.
Is this a good template for the rest of the Reiwa era of Kamen Rider to work from? Yes, absolutely. For one, 01 shows some of the best special effects that the franchise has seen. The green screen, stunt choreography, and amount of on-screen suit acting are among the best that tokusatsu on television has put forth, and will go on to be built upon by the likes of Saber and Geats. Even with the health precautions, it introduced characters like the Arc and Ai-chan, voice-only characters who could be incredibly important to the story. We see that again in Revice through the Inner Demons. The use of green screen here would become much more prominent in Saber to depict scenes beyond our usual shooting locations. The commentary on contemporary issues? That reoccurs in Geats. The story of 01 would provide the framework of Kamen Rider seasons forward, and against incredible adversity, shows how much you can work with the confines of an inescapable global issues while trying to push a story. Sub-series like Kamen Rider Outsiders, despite featuring a cast from the entire franchise, would use the framing device of the technology of 01, the power games of Gaiamatsu, and the influence of the Arc and Zea. It even features Kamen Rider 03, and nobody has to argue about the dynamics of it being a final form for anyone. But that's a story for another day. 01 shot beyond the scope of any other Kamen Rider show. Just like Ichigo and Kuga, this season had an incredible risk of dooming its chances by showing concepts that challenge viewers. Ichigo was initially a dark, brooding, and somewhat scary show that didn't find its viewership until Hayato Ichimonji was introduced. Giving it a fair amount of levity, Kuga turned the entire concept of Showa Kamen Rider into a procedural drama, with tragedy and violence on full display. And here, the risk challenges the faith of its viewers by looking for a mediation of technology and humanity, and how each can theoretically prosper together. Even in the infancy of the film, Metropolis from 1927 confronts the issue of a technology being used by the wealthy to enact their own idealized visions of the world. Robots to replace the once living, people acting as tools to act out a machine's will. It all comes crashing down, and we are left with a message. The mediator between the head and the hands must be the heart. Call me crazy, But that explains the core messaging of 01 as well. For humanity to take off toward their dreams, what they create must work towards a fundamental good toward themselves. This message in itself goes back further than Kamen Rider, and is one of the core concepts that Shotaro Ishinomori explored in Kikaider. Jiro, the titular android soldier, is born robotic, but he strives to find the humanity in himself, not out of pure heroism, but for inherent goodness. He was born with an evil heart, made as a tool to act out of malice, and is still influenced by it in his actions. He fights through this, even if he's not human. That's 01. Every Humagear shown in their path to singularity is acting out of conscious actions, to fight for something beyond what is expected of them. Singularity, in this show, and within the notion that the writers are trying to achieve, is humanity. AI is fickle, new substance created by the ingenuity of modern science, all coming from the core interest of humanity to find what can be possible with our tools. We've seen many examples of the maligned use of AI, and it's completely understandable why anyone would have total apprehension towards the entire topic. But know that this is a byproduct of our very existence, and that we could generate something more than this. We can continue to excite ourselves. We will continue to surprise ourselves. We can tell each other stupid jokes, working out of pure generosity to entertain one another. We can still believe in fairness. We can still be gentle. We can continue to dream. We can shoot towards greater things.
Take off towards a dream.
It's been a little while. The extra footage film for the toy section I recorded in
2020.
This is more than just a history. It's the legacy of 01. And I have my team, my friends, and most of all, Liz, to thank to get to this point. One of my friends was able to sell me this Izu plush that I've been wanting forever. One of my bestest friends gifted me this years ago. 01 means that much to me, and I have you to thank for watching Legacy of 01. But of course, this is just the beginning. So, with all that being said, join me next time as we decide this story's ending in Kamen Rider Saber.
Rider Kick!